That's what my dad called me last year. He's like, you got any more of them rubber bands? I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, all my broadheads are open in my quiver.
HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Deer Grow.
Man, we've been using Deer Grow products for a long time. The Plot Start and Plot Boost, more recently Plot Till. Now we've got 3 new liquid fertilizers that have been put in the mix that will cover everything we could want for a food plot program.
It's huge, man. The more food plotting we do, it's like, man, the liquids just make sense. Like whether it's herbicides or the Plot Start and Plot Boost, and now the fertilizers getting mixed in. It's like, man, I can combine all of those in certain cases and do less passes for more results.
I mean, it's all about efficiency. I mean, like you said, less passes. If you're out there treating your beans with glyphosate in the summertime, you can mix in this fertilizer, do that all at once. You have the boost in there that helps the metabolism. It's all about efficiency when we're talking about food plots. And really the big difference on these liquid fertilizers is you're bypassing some of these soil limitations, pH limitations, the soil type. In a lot of cases, we talk about dry fertilizers only being available for 17% of what you put down in the first year. These liquid fertilizers straight into the plant are 90% available in the first year. Huge difference in what you're going to see in growth.
It's huge. And so right now you can use code HUNTR15 for 15% off any of the Deer Grow products on their website. And as always,
better food plots, bigger deer. And we're back.
Hey,
HUNTR Podcast, episode 249, as YouTube kept me in line there, and Nick.
Yeah.
But YouTube.
Yeah.
As well.
Nice little checkpoint there. So, hey, thank you guys for being with us wherever you're listening to us from. YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Those are the main places we drop these episodes. We do that every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern time. We've been consistent now for, I think, we're in the 5th year here, which is pretty cool. So
yeah, we're into year 5.
Chugging along. And we have some merch and stuff on the website. You guys can check that out. We got some new stuff coming here in the next couple of weeks and or months, or throughout the time frame there. And it's just going to be Jeremy and I today. So
plot twist.
Let's get into it.
We haven't done this in a while.
We would do.
We haven't been flying solo in a while.
We like hearing each other talk too much too. So that's sometimes the intros go a little long, or we have to tail off at the end there. So I'm glad we got some time for just for us to catch up.
It's been very guest specific for, I don't know. It's probably been since like right at the end of the season.
Yeah. Well, and we get the farm companions to ourselves, so that's
that's true.
Guys are like, you guys just like to hear each other talk. Maybe a little. That's true. Maybe we need to spar here a little bit.
Yeah. So no, it's good. I mean, because I think there's a lot of recap like in an opportunity like this where it's just us to be like, okay, here's who we've been talking to. Here's things that are happening, and then of course, like we just get to kind of divulge our thoughts and process. Like one of the big things here recently, not to like just plow right into it, is there's been 2 states that have now proposed baiting license bills. And that would be Michigan and Tennessee. And Tennessee passed theirs. So effectively,
you sent me that document last night. Did they pass it in March?
I don't know when it got passed, but I confirmed that it, at least from everything that I've seen, it is passed, and it will go into effect on July 1st. It is essentially $50 for residents, $100 for non-residents to be able to bait on private land. And yeah, I mean,
just anywhere. It's just pretty open-ended. Any strings attached? It's just, I mean,
there are some definitions to it. We can kind of look in. I mean, the crazy thing is like, dude, you want to talk about the definition of chasing the dollar? It's like, for what? All you're doing is trying to get more money. Like either make baiting legal or not. Okay, great. But now to put a baiting license in there for me to then say, okay, baiting is legal on your private land only if you pay this $50 or $100 license. It's crazy.
I mean, is that what it is, you think?
Yes.
Yeah. Will that yield a substantial number?
In fact, it will. Here, I'll read you. This is really crazy what they said. So this is from the General Assembly in Tennessee, so the legislature side of things. The proposed legislation allows the commission to permit hunting over baited areas for deer. Private landowners who are currently exempt from hunting license requirements for deer on their property would be required to buy the supplemental baiting license. So if you're not required to buy a deer license to hunt deer on your property, you still have to buy a bait license, which is, come on, like, really
interesting.
You're not going to make them buy the general deer hunting license, but you're going to make them buy the supplemental bait license.
Right.
That's insane. If anything, it should be like, hey, you don't have to buy the bait license, but you got to buy a deer license now. Dumb.
Is there, have you come across I mean, obviously it looks bad at face value. I like to give them the benefit of the doubt. Have you seen like an explanation as to why that is?
Yeah. Well, here, you talking about the bait side or
why they're advocating for it? I mean, I assume it's, as we talk a lot of these game agencies, they just feel like we have to keep giving opportunities. Is just tied to that? We're losing hunters. We're not killing enough deer.
So Tennessee is doing this because Alabama did it. Okay. They're literally trying to, as adjacent states, partly adjacent, they're trying to mirror that. They've in here they even say,
didn't Alabama already come out and say though that it's not doing anything?
No, that was Mississippi. In a similar bait license program administered by the Alabama Department of Natural Resources, 68% of hunters bought the bait license. Okay,
of course they did.
So what they're saying,
it'll keep growing too.
Of 170,000 deer hunters, so there's your first thing is Tennessee's only got 170,000 licensed deer hunters.
Yeah. Compared to what do we have in PA? 900,000?
650.
650. Okay.
Yep. And over 400, I think, or just under 400.
Michigan's got a big number though.
500.
500. Okay.
Yep.
Which is where you're going next.
Yep.
Yep.
So if that's the case, of them, 115,000 would buy the bait license. If we look at the perspective, residents versus non-residents, which they're saying is 95% resident, 5% non-resident, the bait permit for residents would generate $5.5 million annually and $578,000 annually for non-resident hunters. So together, you're looking at a $6.5 million revenue stream each year from the bait license.
It just seems like a really cheap price for the soul of your state. $6 million?
$6 million.
What's that going to do for you?
I don't know.
That's nothing.
It's a dollar chase, though. The entire document here of like why we're doing this bill is to make money. Has nothing to do with the resource. Has nothing to do with the quality of hunting. Has nothing to do with is this going to because now all of a sudden you got cell cameras and bait in Tennessee. You're going to lock down more land. Like more land is not going to get hunted, which means your antlerless harvest is going to go down.
So that's not a DNR imposed thing, right?
It's a state legislature.
That was legislators just decided, hey, we need to make more, do more money at this, or hey, we want it for whatever reason.
Same in Michigan. Michigan's the same way. I sent you that one in Michigan, which somebody told me that the bill might be dead. According to Chad Stewart, who's the deer biologist, he just said it was a dumpster fire.
When I saw that, I was like, dude, as if Michigan could get any worse. I was like, you're going to let them bait now.
Yep. So Michigan House proposed two bills. One was because I kind of agree with it, like basically give 2 free antlerless tags. Yeah, why are you making me pay for doe tags? If you need does killed, don't make me pay for them. Just give them to me. Mm-hmm. So I'm fine with that. The other one would be allow baiting for a fee and then it says also to be able to establish a clearer distinction between baiting and feeding. Okay.
That's in Michigan.
That's in Michigan.
So they're currently allowed to feed?
That's what it sounds like, but you can't bait.
Oh, well, it's not going to create a more clear distinction. It's just going to get you a hall pass to.
Yeah. So here's what it says. Currently, the bill outlines baiting deer and elk doesn't include a few specific situations. Feeding birds or other wildlife is okay as long as it is done in a way that keeps wild, free-ranging whitetail deer and elk from accessing the food. What?
Be up high, I guess. If you're feeding birds.
Jesus.
Okay.
That's the stupidest thing.
Yeah, so what they're saying is hey, just to be safe.
I can feed the squirrels.
To be safe, you better just buy this thing here and you'll be safe.
Yep. If feed gets scattered due to regular logging or farming activities, using or storing feed for farming purposes, if allowed. Livestock living in an area are eating the feed daily. The feed is covered so deer and elk can't access it, and it's stored properly according to typical farming practices. So it says now...
Pretty cryptic.
Yeah. The bill defines feed as anything made up of grains, minerals, salt, fruits, vegetable, hay, or other food substances, whether natural or manufactured, that could attract whitetail deer or elk. It makes exceptions for a few things. wildlife plantings, which would be food plots, and standard farm practicing. It says a deer baiting license would cost $20, and you must also have a valid deer license. No more than 5 gallons of bait per day may be distributed per site.
What?
Yeah, that's what it says.
My word.
So you're carrying in a 5-gallon bucket per day. Like, who's enforcing this?
Who is...
That's what it is.
I don't know, dude. It's just like
that was what
we're spiraling at this point.
And it's just like, so obviously we've dove right into this thing. It's at the end of the day, who cares, right? It's baiting's legal in Ohio. What's the point though? Like in defense of baiting in Ohio, I don't think this is accurate, but in defense of it, they believe that if there was no baiting in Ohio, we would either lose hunters and or kill fewer deer, which
it's fear. It's a fear-based.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So you don't have baiting in either of these states right now, Michigan or Tennessee. Is introducing it, do you think you'll kill more deer? According to
some probably do,
but according to both of these, it's purely a money grab. Has nothing to do with like, do we think we'll kill more deer from it? Neither of those papers said anything about, hey, how this will affect your deer harvest.
Well, maybe not. Well, and none of it seems to have been coming from any game agencies.
They're not.
It's just they just passed a law.
Legislature.
So I don't know what that means. Like
bills and law. Yep.
Yeah.
And then the game agency's just forced to implement it.
Yeah.
And also enforce it. Like the 5-gallon bucket rule. How are Michigan game wardens going to effectively administer, watch over people putting 5 gallons per day?
Yeah, you can't.
Let's say 10 days in a row, I go and dump 5-gallon buckets. So now I have 50 gallons of corn, and maybe the deer just haven't hit it yet. Or did I just put 50 gallons out at one time?
Right. It's not enforceable at all. How can you even make a law like that? It's not enforceable.
It's a money grab. And honestly,
it's sad.
If whether you're for or against bait, throw that out of it. As just us as deer hunters should be pissed off because all this is for the state
more gray
to
area.
Take more money. Well, they're taking more money.
Take more money. It's more opportunity for you to get in trouble potentially. More rules to be aware of.
That's exactly
it. Or try to interpret.
Yeah, I mean, people have said it before. It's like you need a damn lawyer in your back pocket when you go out and hunt. Like if I go out, what happens if I have permission property and I go out in Michigan and there's a giant pile of corn or apples on the ground. And I'm like, did somebody put this out in 5-gallon increments? Am I liable for what happens now?
Dude, it's a dumpster fire out there. I don't know if I've shared with my my experience of the Old Hat property in Ohio too. It's a similar situation where it's like what it is it's a paid walk-in access program in Ohio that the state purchases from the landowner. So they pay them. It says right on the website.
So they basically lease it.
They say right here, yeah, we'll lease it from you for, $30 an acre or something like that. And that allows daily usage permits to be distributed to hunters. So I can go on the website and I can get my pass for the day. They allow up to a certain percentage. But what they don't tell you is that it's a non-exclusive lease. So the landowner can still give permission to whoever they want. And beyond that, the Old Hat program restricts uses of trail cameras, baiting, and I think a few other things. You can't do those things under the Old Hat permit. But the landowner can still let other people do whatever they want. So the first time I walked on there, I'm under the impression, I'm like, hey, there's going to be, I have like an advantage here. It's a level playing field because there's not going to be any trail cameras. Sure enough, I walk right on, and no tree stands and blinds overnight. Same thing. Landowner can let them leave there. I walk on there. Here's this freaking giant blind.
Yep.
Over with a corn pile with a camera on it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, getting ready to call the warden and stuff. It's a Sunday, of course. They don't pick up, And
but then we read the things and it was like, I
eventually got a hold of one of them and talked to it. And they're like, oh yeah, and they explained the program to me. And I asked him not to offend him. I was like, so what is the point? What are you paying them for?
Access.
I'm like, yeah, but I can just already get access from and they're like, well, yeah, but to make people aware of it. I'm like, how dumb is that?
Yeah. Which is where like the Pennsylvania Farm Co-op program is good in that way, and that like it is truly a lease type
There's some state with great walk-in programs.
Yeah, Kansas is one.
North Dakota.
Plots.
There's a handful of them.
Yeah, I just, when I'm looking at these things coming in, I'm just like, I just have to wonder what the goal is. And I mean, we talk about it, and even, obviously this past week we dropped the Pennsylvania Game Commission podcast, and keep in mind, like, there were a few people that are like, man, I wish you guys grilled them harder. Ultimately, like, these biologists, they're just doing their job. They have no power. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, there's no power. They make recommendations. I would say the majority of those recommendations are turned and twisted, and whether they're actually considered or not, who knows? It's commissioners, and it's legislatures, and it's governors and lieutenant governors. Mm-hmm. Like, those are the power people here. So, like, I know there's plenty of deer biologists out there from states that take shit, and rightfully so. I think some of them deserve it, just the way that they communicate and or don't communicate. But
or are out of touch.
Out of touch. We've had plenty of those discussions too. But ultimately, like, they're just doing their job, and they give their recommendations to the next level, and then those people will just go ahead and make independent decisions anyways. Mm-hmm. So I say that not to go easy on the deer biologists, because I do think that they need to be more publicly available. I think they need to be in touch with what's happening in the community aspect of things.
Wasn't it interesting? I felt like, and not to put the PA guys on the spotlight, just because we talked to them very recently, they were like, it was like a new idea I was proposing to them, that like allowing crossbows into the archery season meant that people were spending more time in the field over the course of the season.
The one disagreement
and
we for sure had.
I understand they push back on that. Let's get to that. But like, he was like, well, it was the first time they were considering it. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, you and I on a daily basis are like, dude, we live in like a post-crossbow inclusion. Like, it was the biggest thing other than cell cameras that's changed
we know that.
The landscape. 100%. And he's like, well, yeah, I don't know. And then he sent us that data after the fact. So the PA Game Commission has a chart that over the 20 years basically says that since the introduction of crossbows into the archery season, 100 days of field has not changed at all.
And we call bullshit.
There's no way that that's accurate.
Agree.
There's just no way.
Yeah.
Go out in the woods and tell me how this is happening then.
I mean, my 3/4 of my family hunted 2 to 4 days a year. Now hunt 10 days a year.
100%. It's just wrong information.
Yeah.
But that's what they're making decisions off of. They're like, well, I don't know. We still need, we need more.
And I didn't read deep into like who they surveyed and how many people, but it's wrong. It's inherently wrong. Yeah. And the other thing is, it is, somebody was talking about like the decline in hunters, and like you don't hear a bunch of shots in the big woods anymore, and you don't see deer hanging at camps. I'm adamant that those people are killing their deer in archery season with a crossbow.
100%.
It's not that
they'll tell you that. It's not like a bad thing. It's just that's what's happening.
Yeah, it's not that they're not hunting anymore. I mean, yes, hunter numbers have decreased. We're at 650 some or 670,000 people, but they have other opportunities to kill their deer.
Well, also in Pennsylvania, there has been a shift away out of the big woods, because we have a lot more deer down in farm country now.
Ton.
Yeah, we didn't used to have as many.
Yeah, you don't have to drive.
It's interesting. I saw that comment you're talking about. And some people, and even the Game Commission was like, the number one call we get is we're not seeing any deer.
Yep.
And I think that's fairly exclusive to the big woods area, because you come down like where we're at in the Pittsburgh suburbs, it's like they're everywhere.
Everywhere. Yeah, and
I hunted a property last year with Colton.
Yeah.
We had Colton on the podcast.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Just for fun. I sold him all my old Sitka stuff there, and he's like, oh, we should go. I'm trying to shoot a doe tonight. We went to this farm property.
It was in Greene County?
Not far from here.
Or Washington?
Yeah, somewhere. I've never seen so many deer.
Yeah.
Out of like cattle pasture. It's like classic PA, you know what I mean? Just
rolling. A
couple trees up on the knobs. When we get up there, there's just freaking deer running everywhere out of like no cover.
Yeah. Well, I mean, dude, I went on public land on state forest ground the last Friday of gun season, and I walked for 4 hours, and I saw 29 deer and like 11 bucks on public, and the majority of those bucks were legal. Like, I could have tagged out in the first hour and 20 minutes if I wanted to. Shot a 2-year-old 8-point, been done. So, and I'm not saying that that's everywhere, because we've gone to A&F and like
seen very few deer. We experienced that. Yep.
So, at the same time, I think if you go to A&F, you've got the chance to hunt a mature whitetail buck in the state of Pennsylvania, which is a rarity in a lot of other places in this state. You know, where the hunting pressure is, even where JD and I were yesterday looking at that farm, I'm like, man, there's so many deer on this farm. It's beautiful. I'm looking through the pictures with the guy who had managed his property. I didn't see a deer over 2 years old.
Yeah.
As we're driving around, I'm looking at all of the touch points to the farm, and I'm like, they're all dead. There's 9 guys hunting 200 acres.
Yeah.
Right? So
well, that's what they said. They ran the math. I think they said statewide there's 1,400
per square mile.
That's insane.
Yeah, so when you think about that, like there's a ton of hunting pressure, and because of that, there's no possible way that they're not spending more time afield. Otherwise, on the opening day of gun season, it would be like it was in the 90s and 2000s where you're driving along the road and it's like pumpkin suits the whole way. I hardly ever see that anymore.
Did these game agencies just don't seem to understand at all that we are competing with each other more than ever before because of all of the quote unquote opportunities that we have.
That was the weirdest discussion point.
They don't get it. They're just like, well, we're losing hunter. I'm like, you don't understand. We're competing more fiercely than ever before. We're using everything to our advantage. He who has the most cell cameras and the biggest corn pile wins, AKA a rich man's sport.
Absolutely. And I mean, even we'll all acknowledge that hunter numbers are declining, but it's tougher for access than it's ever been before. Every property in whitetail country is being hunted. Every property. And it's like, how is that possible if our hunter numbers are 20% down? Either the numbers are wrong or it's all of these liberalization opportunities that are just driving people to secure more land selfishly than
100%. Yeah, it's just in competition. It's like this is one of the rare cases where it's like, okay, if you can't win on the playing field that you have, just buy the adjacent playing fields. And then all of a sudden, only the richest players occupy the whole game, and that's who wins.
We've seen it, man. We've talked to guys who have bought properties that are basically like, you know, Skolm is a great example in Wisconsin. Not to pick him out, he'll listen to this and giggle, but maybe he doesn't giggle. He's 7 foot tall. That would kind of be weird. Maybe he would. But like if he buys a piece of property that's adjacent to his main farm, he's displacing like 6 to 8 hunters in that. And so some people will say, well, that's bullshit. Well, no. First of all, Nick is building a farm. He's owning land, right? But you have to understand that is happening at a scale across the board. In particularly the higher density states. Like maybe you don't displace 6 hunters when you buy an 80-acre piece in Kansas, but when you buy an 80-acre piece in Ohio, I bet you displace 5 or 6 hunters unless it's already been displaced prior to you owning it, which we are getting to that point now. Like I think a lot of these farms that you're getting into, you're not buying a farm that's been hunted by 6 to 8 guys and you're displacing them. You're buying it from somebody who displaced them 3, 5, 6, 7 years beforehand. You know, so now you're buying it and it's a 1-to-1 switch or something like that. It just seems like that domino effect is continuing to happen. And in a state like Pennsylvania, that's why I was trying to tell people in some of those comments, I was like, guys, you know, you don't realize how good you have it in this state because of the amount of public land and stuff. And frankly, I think the funniest thing is like the Game Commission is from a deer side 100% focused on managing the deer population. Nothing else. They don't care about anything else.
A deer's a deer.
But in a weird way, they don't even give a shit about the number. They're like, is the habitat good or bad? If it's bad, kill more. If it's good, we're good. Like it's as basic as A, B, black, white. Like there is no in between. If you ask them, okay, well, how many deer should I have here? They said it straight out to it. It doesn't matter the number. How's the habitat look? And or how are the stakeholders in that area? You know, I mean, how are they responding? That's been my criticism from the Game Commission for 20 years. Is at one point in time they would literally take hula hoops out in the middle of a forest and throw it out, and they'd say, "Boy, there's no deer food in here. We need to kill more deer." That was deer management in this state.
There's also seemingly a pretty severe misdiagnosis of like hunter. Well, I mean, what would you call like nature? You know what I mean? Like, what was her name?
Intent. You mean
Andrea? Was her?
Yeah, Andrea.
Mm-hmm. You know, was kind of like she brought up a few times about like wanting to change hunter I mean, what did you call it? Or culture, intention. You know, what I mean? we need to shift. You know, we don't want people to just think bucks are trophies, like all deer are trophies. And I'm like,
no,
that will never happen.
It's gone.
That will never, because it's wrong. And that's like believing that.
That may have been.
That's like believing communism will work. Like the foundation of human nature is not that.
Yeah,
guys want to kill bucks.
Mm-hmm.
They
always
have. It's not a bad thing either. So my point was, leverage that. Like you use that to apply management.
We had a tough time in that discussion point. And honestly, it's not just them. It's been Ohio. It's been Missouri. It's been Michigan. Is that the failure to realize that just lengthening season and more opportunity isn't going to do it when buck seasons and doe seasons overlap. If buck seasons are in and people have a valid buck tag, they're not going to doe hunt.
Yeah. It tells you what people's priority is.
You have to create, like, positioned appropriately during the season, antlerless only opportunities. Mm-hmm. They can't overlap. They can't be super early in the season. Like somebody commented, they're like, well, in Pennsylvania, you can take your muzzleloader for the early doe season and your bow. Well, dude, if I'm buck hunting, that muzzleloader's not coming off the damn hook.
If they don't overlap and they're distant enough from the buck opportunity, I think you can do something with that.
That was what was so beautiful about
Like if I had a September 1st doe opener gun in Ohio, for instance, I think people would take it. And then buck doesn't open until September 28th.
The heat would be one. Dude, the beautiful part about Pennsylvania's doe season was that we came off of 2 weeks of buck-only firearm. When that ended, there was nothing until the day after Christmas. Mm-hmm. So essentially, December 10th-ish, 3 days of doe season came in. And there was nothing until December 26th. And the majority of guys were done hunting anyways because it was archery and flintlock muzzleloader afterwards. So you had you basically concluded the normal hunting season with a 3. It was the last chance to put meat in your freezer, and we annihilated them. Mm-hmm. That is a smart play. The problem is everybody's gone to these long-ass concurrent seasons, and there is no ability to have that tail end prior to like a weird primitive season at the end of the year because it just goes straight through the whole year. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to want it in January because now we're talking shed bucks and stuff.
Right.
You need it in that late November, early December time period. And you need a long enough time frame that weather won't completely destroy it. Like if it's just a monsoon for 3 days, it's not going to be wiped out. So maybe it's a week-long season. And if you really need to kill, and I don't disagree with them, but like the Game Commission was very much on the mindset of we need to keep killing does. Dude, you're going to do a hell of a job at killing antlerless deer right now. 2-1.
Yeah, and they were acknowledged. Yeah, they're like, hey, we're on track. Yeah, I think they felt like they were way more than some other states.
Yep. So I just think that it needs to be in a mindset that, and I don't know how you put that cat back in the bag though, because you've now lengthened the seasons, you've overlapped them concurrently. How do you cut them back at this point?
I don't understand why it has to be so hard. There's such a bureaucratic process. It's just like manage the deer herd, like change the season. Like,
yep.
We're just banging our head against the wall. You know what I mean? These are basic, low-hanging, things that should be.
Yeah, and
it should be way easier for somebody to mandate to make a change.
The criticism is that it's like, well, no, the hunters have the ability though. They have the freedom to make the decision. They won't. They will not make the decision. If the decision is between I'm going to go buck hunt even with a bow versus I'm going to take 2 days and gun hunt for just does, they're going buck hunting with their bow.
100%. They're going to use every opportunity. That's what I'm saying. That's the nature of hunters, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No,
it's mismanagement.
Yeah,
of the hunters. Frankly,
that's why I said it's always easy to manage the wildlife. We can lay that out. If you're mismanaging the wildlife because you're misinterpreting the intent of the hunter, it's failed. You're missing the mark. Yeah. It's no different than any of these hey, we're going to give you more doe tags. That's not going to kill more deer. Mm-hmm. You still have to incentivize them to actually do it. Or Michigan saying we're going to give you 2 free ones. Great. Like that's awesome. It's still probably not going to kill significantly more does. Mm-hmm. So it's like you have to change. You have to analyze the intent, which is I want to kill a buck. At all times, as if I have a valid tag, the hunter's mindset is I want to kill a buck. And then there are certain times that I 100% believe, I'm not saying that they don't exist out there, that there are people that want meat in the freezer. But if you frame that to where their mindset doesn't have to overlap with the I need to also fill my buck tag, you win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll also, I guess, sympathize with them. Like they are hated by a lot of people. I mean, not surprisingly.
Well, a little bit, because especially if, I mean, agencies as a whole, I get it.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, okay. I thought you were going to go like individuals. Like I know a lot of people jump on like Sumner's, and he's obviously in a different position in Missouri now, but like, you know,
he's pretty hated, but
yeah, but ultimately, like Jason has a responsibility to do what the legislatures and commission need him to do, which is control the deer population.
Mm-hmm.
That's all they care about.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, sure, maybe he's not agreeing with everything, or maybe he's not in tune with everything that the community's saying, but he's also doing the job that he was put in charge to do.
Yeah.
So you could call him out individually, but no different than any of the other biologists, like David Stainbrook, who's the head of the deer and elk in Pennsylvania. Like you can say, well, David's, you know, he sucks, he's mismanaged. David's just providing recommendations.
Yeah. No, what I'm saying is agencies as a whole.
Yeah.
They're just in a tough spot.
Why do you think that? Just in general, why do you think that agencies as a whole are hated by the hunting public?
I mean, I just think they are in a tough position between the people and legislators, and also their enforcement wing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, frankly, they've ruffled feathers. You know,
what I mean? Yeah.
To start on that side of it, dude, I don't know any respectable hunters, like good people and older people, guys, you know, 50s, 60s, 70s type people that don't have some negative experience with law enforcement on the hunting.
Sure.
You know, with wardens basically.
Yep.
There's just there's an abuse of power, frankly, and I sympathize with those guys too, because they're understaffed.
Absolutely.
And they're just like we're complaining about the complexities of the laws. They're the ones that have to enforce
interpret it. Yeah.
And it's not black and white. So I mean, it's understandable that they're kind of like there's like there's some friction there.
Yeah.
From a legislative standpoint, I think that like like you're saying, these biologists and stuff, they have input, they can make recommendations based on what they feel is correct. But ultimately, you know, legislators can override it. And so a lot of us feel like these rules and laws and stuff are coming, just the DNR says, hey, this is what we need. And that's not always the case. They're just the ones that have to
enforce
stand by it and enforce it.
Mm-hmm.
And also there's a lot, I would say a vast majority of the public, the hunting public, doesn't know what they're talking about.
Yep.
They don't know what they're observing. You know what I mean? They have a few anecdotal experiences. They go out, you know, 2 weekends a season and they're like, oh, we didn't see any deer or this or that. And just frankly, they don't understand the dynamics that are happening in their state. They're not spending enough time.
I would assume that's the number one beef, right? I mean, at least from a deer hunting perspective, is if you're legitimately unhappy with the game agency that's managing your state, it's because you're not seeing deer.
No, that could be one.
I mean, I would say that's the biggest, because that's how the majority of deer hunters justify a successful hunt or not. Did I see deer or not?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. It's certainly one. It's a big one here.
It's for sure not age class and quality of animal. That's a minority of the hunters. Small minority of the hunters.
Right.
You know, 10% maybe.
Right.
The 90% is, did I see deer or not?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's plenty of places you can go to see deer.
Apparently not, according to our comments.
Well, that's PA. There are places where they're sparse.
I do think that there are people that are just bad hunters.
No, you're not wrong. There are places, you know, talk about the UP of Michigan. You talk about
when you get wolves and things like that.
That definitely is a, you know, but on a blanket statement, it's one major pillar. I wouldn't say it's 50% or more of all hunting.
So what else would you say then?
Issues that people have. Mm-hmm. Oh, dude. I mean,
from a deer standpoint.
I mean, it's a long list from anything you mentioned. I mean, your and I's would be competition amongst hunters, and ultimately an age class thing. It's an access type issue as well. Which I assume is a
small amount of people thinking that age class.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because it's funny, you know, people somebody brought up, well, yeah, I wish
it's going to be regional for sure. I mean,
like if we think about the age class or quality of animal thing, I had people say, man, Pennsylvania couldn't be further from a state like Iowa in that mindset. Dude, the Iowa DNR thinks the exact same way as the Pennsylvania Game Commission. The only difference is there's a group of individuals in Iowa that are manipulating the legislature side to manage for quality animals. Mm-hmm. Iowa DNR doesn't give a shit about quality animals at all. They care about population control, especially in an ag state. There's a group of people that help manage that direction from a legislative side to keep Iowa great, which is completely an indirect relation to what the actual DNR is trying to do from deer management side. Mm-hmm.
Well, they're not oblivious to it. I mean, we haven't had anybody on it.
Those guys were. Our game commission guys were completely oblivious to the fact that like deer hunting is better in Pennsylvania than it was 20 years ago.
Well, yeah, but you'd have to be an idiot to see that, hey, it takes 6 years to draw, and it's more than any other state. Like, to realize that there's not some kind of demand for, something that they're doing.
But it isn't a priority in their management pocket.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I don't think it is. I think if they could...
I mean, if it wasn't, they would change it today.
They've been trying. The legislators have been trying, and guys like Skip and them have blocked them. Yeah,
but there has to be some justification for it.
They want to kill more deer.
So they're seeing the value, yeah.
They want to kill more deer. The state wants to kill more deer. There's not a state in the whitetail range that doesn't want to kill more deer.
Yeah.
That's the goal, is kill deer, keep the population in check. Nobody... Your vision of like, I want to see deer is the complete antithesis of what the state wants you to do. They want you to see some deer.
I know. That's what's crazy is like we're seemingly at odds. You know what I mean? Like all the state DNRs, like you're saying, they want us to kill deer, and the hunters, case in point, by like the harvest number, they're like, no, we don't want to. Like whether they don't have enough deer already or it gets more granular than that. I think that's where you start talking about your age classes and bucks versus does type of thing. There's definitely cultures. Like I know in Pennsylvania, there still are a ton of guys who are like, we don't shoot those. Like those are the future bucks.
Yeah, they were they still do. They burn their doe tags. Mm-hmm. They get them and they burn them.
Yeah.
Like that's their protest.
And in other states, we probably need more of that, frankly. I mean, not that that's the correct way of thinking, but there's still...
But the state won't think that way.
No.
Because the state needs population numbers in check. The state is, as much as they're in charge of the resource, and this is going to sound bad for them, as much as they're in charge of the research, they're the caretaker of the natural resource of the state, they're killing deer to appease other stakeholders.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Hoyt.
Should be no surprise to anyone listening to this that back with Hoyt another season. I'm actually going to be shooting the AX2 aluminum this year.
You traitor.
But you're still going RX9.
Yeah, blacked out as always.
Blacked out. Yeah. Big surprise for everyone.
80 pounds. Big surprise. Yeah.
But seriously, man, I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. Every year it seems like we get a new Hoyt bow in our hands, and they're always a step above the last and just a step above everybody else.
Yeah, they're so consistent, man. Just their processes get better, every year. And we've really been excited about, as we've grown with Hoyt, we've brought some others in with us. And we just feel like the Hoyt family is growing, like the community, and we're really excited about the people that are involved, excited to be a part of that company. And it's really awesome.
So for anyone that's excited about Hoyt, like Jared and I are, you can use the code HUNTR, HUNTR, on Hoyt.com.
Get serious, get Hoyt. Dude, I have to say, and I'm not a biologist, so I go off of common sense and what I think is right. Like when we were talking to them about the age class of a deer herd, and I asked biologically, are we at a disadvantage by not having 3-year-old and older bucks? And they said, no, there's no biological advantage.
We are at a disadvantage.
And that feels so wrong in my bones. I was like, that's a lie.
Yeah, no, I mean, a healthy age class is a healthy deer herd.
Common sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a balanced age structure.
Common sense
is a healthy deer herd. Yeah.
So I knew at that point I was like, where are we going with this?
In a post CWD world, in their minds, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
The younger the age class, the better we are at controlling.
Well, I know,
it.
And that's a lot of them, they just look at deer as deer, like a deer is a deer, and it just couldn't be further from the truth.
Every state agency.
I know. I'm like, dude, there's a giant difference between, first of all, bucks and does.
Mm-hmm.
but especially old mature bucks and, you know, any other doe. To try to say that they're the same thing in the eyes of hunters or of anything else, it's just not the case.
I think that's one of the biggest disconnects in the hunting community is the failure to realize that how much revenue is driven by mature deer and big deer. Like, nobody would come to Iowa if you could only kill 2-year-olds.
Or does.
Yeah. Nobody
Who cares?
Nobody would go.
Who cares?
Nobody would go to Missouri and buy non-resident tags if you were just killing 2-year-olds.
Yeah. I don't think it's like whatever, misguided or whatever to say that, you know, I think Andrew would be offended if I said, hey, I don't care to shoot does as much as I do a mature buck.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and she would she'd be like, well, why?
Yeah.
I'm like, what do you mean why?
Yeah.
Like, they're not the same thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, we don't have to act like, and there'll be people they'll sit on their high horse and say, like, every deer is a trophy. Cool, that's fine. Like, I mean.
They used to be.
Don't get me wrong.
They used to
be. I absolutely, when I shoot a doe, I'm appreciative of it to
100%.
have meat. I'm not saying that, but it's not a trophy.
It's not hard.
No.
When it was hard, they were a trophy. If you killed a deer with your bow, one time people were like, wow, impressive.
Impressive.
You know, and not that you're doing it for other people, but it just speaks to difficulty yields.
That's why people try to kill mature bucks.
There's something to that.
There's not a lot of them, and they're hard to kill.
Well, yeah. And unfortunately, that's the saddest part about all of this is we're to a point where it's not that hard anymore. It shifted to where the hard part now is owning the land that they live on.
Yeah, find them.
And it's a bummer. You know what I mean? It's like you hate to see that that is the very definition of a rich man sport. When guys would say, we're afraid that it's going to go that way.
Well, dude, they couldn't even fathom when you talked about fences going up. That was like, they looked at you like you had 4 eyeballs.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're like, what do you mean? Why would somebody put up a fence? And it's like,
to protect us from you.
Yeah,
we don't want anything you're doing on
that.
a management level. We don't want that.
Yeah, no
I don't want to hunt in a fence either. That's last resort. I mean, nobody wants that.
Mm-hmm.
But what else are you supposed to do when the surrounding environment is trying to eradicate the resource that you've tried to invest everything into?
Yeah, and that's where, like you said, we're at odds, is that they need deer killed and we're trying to protect deer.
Mm-hmm.
Which is the weirdest thing. Like, I remember having conversations with
not deer. I mean, we need to distinguish too. I mean, we are trying to protect deer, but like, I'll agree in a lot of cases, hey, we need to shoot more does probably. And
in some places,
let's get on board with that. But I'm trying to protect bucks. And what they're not understanding is that guys are using all of the opportunity, and girls, that are given to them not to kill deer, to kill bucks.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Like, but like on my Kentucky farm, I've yet to kill a doe. I don't foresee in the next 3 to 4 years that I will kill a doe on that farm. There's just no deer. And I've got standing food. Like, my habitat can sustain more deer.
Yeah. That's how we are in Illinois too. I haven't shot any does. I don't plan on it in the near future. Don't need to.
It can sustain it.
Yeah.
So it's like in those states, if either of those states, Illinois, which they will, and Kentucky says, hey, we really need you to kill some more does in this area. But no. No, and frankly, anyone that does is damaging the deer herd because there's not enough deer. Our habitat can support more deer. Why would you kill the deer maker, which is the doe?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the disconnect when it comes to numbers. And I think there's a lot of, like, especially on the state agency side, I know they had numbers, Illinois had numbers, but when you get into this of like, I don't know if I believe any of their numbers.
Sure.
From a harvest data, from a 100-day data, and I'm not saying that it's incorrect.
Yeah.
I think how the data was collected and who it was collected from is completely biased.
I'm a big number skeptic just in general. And any and all numbers. I mean, dude, you can make anything look any way you want it to.
Yeah. So, did we really
just look at our society, dude? Like, even the mainstream, like things that we thought were correct, even like from a physical, even look at just vaccines. But basics that everybody at one time was like, this is Bible, this is like absolutely correct. To where now we're like, oh, like, hey, it causes autism.
I shouldn't have that.
Just as an example, it's like, dude, we as a species, like, we don't know shit.
No.
I mean, yeah,
they were pretty honest about
in
that
the field
on the CWD side, though, that we don't know anything. Like, essentially, Wisconsin's been doing it for 20 years, and we still don't know anything.
Yeah. Nobody knows. All they know to do is if they find it, try to kill all the deer immediately, in that area to keep it as an isolated event.
I couldn't believe that Bedford, which is like an hour from us, has like 70% prevalence rates on bucks. I'm like, how do we not know that?
Yeah.
It's like an hour from us.
It's bizarre. I don't want to go all the way down the CWD thing today, but like just still how much of a disconnect there is between like is it happening, isn't it happening, and then
what do we do?
Then what do we do?
Yeah, like between states even?
Between states, between just different professionals. I mean, on one end, you'll have like your whoever, you'll have your Seaberries and your Nugents and your Dr. Deers who basically say, hey, it's not that big of a deal. It's not killing deer. It's, I mean, there's a resistant gene that's out there. It's a density or whatever, frequency versus, so killing them is not going to do anything. Versus on the other side, you'd have like a Sumner's, the PA game.
Brian Richards.
All these other people saying like, they're absolutely dying at a super high rate. Could potentially eradicate the thing. We need to kill them all, keep prevalencies low. Like just complete opposite ends of the spectrum. And the only thing they can agree on is like, no, there is no cure. There's nothing in the middle that there's like
a solution.
So even the game commissioner is like, okay, so strategy is find the isolated event, kill them all, keep prevalency lows or what's the end game? And they're like,
there is none. Just keep prevalence.
Can't get that far.
Everybody's buying time to see what happens in Wisconsin because they've had the longest track, like paying attention to it. So at this point where they're fairly doing nothing in Wisconsin, they're like, okay, what happens next? Do they all start dying? Like, and then that gives us 10 years to figure shit out. Like, you know what I mean? That's to me, that's 100% where it is all eyes are on Wisconsin. And every other state is just trying to keep prevalence low so that if something negative happens in Wisconsin, if deer populations fall off a cliff, they're like, oh shit, we need to kill as many of these as possible. And we can still handle that now. That's the only way that's why the shooting is happening. That's why the prevalence rates are being monitored and tested so frequently, is that if it stays low in an event like that happens, they have enough time and control to make a move to basically do a mass eradication and hope that sustains some sort of or prevents some sort of mass event happening. If it goes crazy, like if you have 70% rates like they have in Bedford County, and we look in Wisconsin and all of a sudden deer too late. That's the future of Bedford. You can't do anything about it. It's already gone. So I think that's the mindset, and that's a hard one for most hunters. In fact, I think it's really interesting in Pennsylvania in that I hardly ever hear anybody talking about CWD in Pennsylvania from a deer hunting standpoint. Nobody's bitching about it. Nobody's really talking about it. Sometimes you hear about the EHD stuff in Greene County.
Well, you don't hear that anywhere. You don't hear any
hunters bitching about CWD.
Yeah, pretty
the
rare.
Management of it.
Yeah, just the management of it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't even hear about the management of it in Pennsylvania.
I know.
It's because I have
heard of, and obviously we've all seen videos online of like deer walking in circles type of a thing. So I'm like, that seems legit. Like, seems like they're out there.
Yeah, I mean, there are deer. I mean, I'll argue against it.
Cases.
Yeah, I'll argue against it all. Deer are dying from CWD. Like, is it a mass extinction? No, it's not. But they're dying out there, just like they're dying from EHD. Same thing. Do they die in larger pockets at quicker times from EHD? Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah.
But I think because we don't experience EHD in Pennsylvania as much, CWD isn't as criticized. The states that have EHD outbreaks that's where CWD is being super critical because, they're tripping over dead bodies every year, and you're telling me that I got to look 30 years in the future and my deer herd might be gone.
Right.
So I'm not saying that they're right or wrong in that scenario. I'm just saying that this is, again, the out of touch thing. I understand that the federal monies are earmarked for CWD, but the state has to acknowledge that the hunting public in a lot of these states has a concern on EHD. Even though we know that EHD has a start and an end point, it happens and then it stops.
I mean, it's two conversations. It's complex, but it's like, yeah, in some states, maybe they should be focusing more on EHD.
They just need to acknowledge it. They're not even acknowledging it.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
So when you're not acknowledging it and you're only focusing on CWD, the hunters are not going to listen to you regardless of what you say.
That's fair.
If you acknowledge EHD and that, hey, it's a problem, it's isolated, here's what's happening, then maybe they start to listen to you on the other side.
Yeah.
But they won't until you fix that. It may be a simple question of like, well, we know what happens, and here, good, tell them, educate them, talk about it. Basically, be sympathetic to them because they're seeing this happen year after year, and they're frustrated that nobody's acknowledging their problem. You're just saying, yeah, bunch of deer died, but guess what? First frost, it won't be an issue. Well, that doesn't fix the 30 deer that are dead in my farm.
I do think there's something to the, I know you get frustrated by the baiting versus feeding thing. And as much as I would not advocate for baiting, from an EHD standpoint, I would advocate for, I mean, it seems like some of these guys are really having results feeding for EHD.
So case in point, and I'm not saying that they're not, I would love for states to do a research project on that and give me the data.
100%.
If you show me data that guys like Lukowski and Skip and these guys are feeding and that they're having minimal EHD because of it, that's enormously
it's a big deal.
Benefit. But they don't want to because then they have to basically put feeding in the conversation with CWD. So the state,
why is that?
The state doesn't want to, because anytime you talk about CWD, you talk about feeding and baiting.
Right.
So if all of a sudden feeding is more beneficial for EHD,
I see.
They don't want to acknowledge it.
I see.
And I get why.
You think baiting facilitates the spreading of CWD?
I do.
You do?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think it just brings them in closer contact. Does that mean, I
can see how it would. I mean,
if people are like, well, then what about licking? Yeah,
right.
Licking branches do. This does. But when you're in a close proximity and you're constantly when you're keeping a deer in a concentrated area for long periods of time, the saliva and urine and everything that carries the prion is going to be highly concentrated there.
Dude, I just think, frankly, like to put it as simply as possible, I have never heard a good argument for baiting. I don't think there is one. Other than you could say, well, it draws them to the area. It gives us opportunity. That's fair. It does do that.
Unnaturally?
Yeah, unnaturally, but who cares?
Mm-hmm.
From an ethics standpoint, I don't care. Mm-hmm. I've shot deer over corn piles.
Yeah, same.
It's fine.
Yeah.
But from a management perspective, I think that
there's no reason for it.
The negatives far outweigh the positives. Yeah, there is no.
Mm-hmm. And then people will say, okay, well, what about food plots? So, okay.
Not the same thing. That's a huge question. Yeah, well, I'd say it's huge, but like you always have like these idiots, in my opinion, who are like, hey, baiting is the same thing as food plots. And they're not. It has to do with the level of effort that's put in to do that. Just also the space confining thing. That's certainly one from a disease standpoint. I think that's why we're saying it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, you're not going to go out there and plant a 5 foot by 5 foot food plot.
No. It wouldn't be there. It'd be gone. It'd be gone tomorrow. It also has to do with like just the barrier to entry. It's in the same way that I don't know what to assimilate it to. It's like a crossbow versus a compound bow or something like that. You could say, hey, that's fine. They're doing essentially a similar thing. It's attracting deer to an area, but one I can buy at the co-op and take out and dump in a 50-pound bag. The other one I have to invest into. I have to first of all have the access to the property and the permission or ownership to do it. I have to work the land. And it's not,
and it still
overly
might not
complicated. It still might not grow.
Yeah,
but it is harder.
Yeah,
and that's the sole difference.
Yeah. Well, and I mean the biggest.
It just means that people won't do it.
Yeah. Exactly. If it takes effort, they won't.
I'd love to know what the number is of the people that would be willing to plant a food plot versus the people that would be willing to dump a corn pile. I think it's way less than 50%.
Well, I mean, so 68% of people in Alabama bought a baiting license. Mm-hmm. I would assume the other 32% just baited without one, right? Like they didn't not bait.
Yeah, it's going to be like a transition to credit cards. It's like if you were a cash only business for a long time, the first year transition to credit cards, you might see 50% of your business as credit cards. Mm-hmm. Case in point, we did this in 2021 or 2. We started taking credit cards. We're up to where now 80% of our business is.
Yeah, it's a convenience factor.
It's convenience. People start to realize how effective it is. They're not competing with each other's credit cards in that sense, but it's a similar, type of a bell curve.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know, but yeah, it would be and it's also like, but frankly, my biggest criticism for a lot of people is like, when you go out and put bait piles down, and you bring deer into a 2 or 4 acre property, a lot of deer into a concentrated, that's unnatural and it's not healthy for the habitat. If you would take an acre of that property and put it into a food plot, you could sustain those deer.
Well, you're getting into a neighborhood dynamic conversation, which I think is a big deal.
Monster.
That's where the herd health really starts to suffer from age class standpoints, because you have properties that shouldn't be carrying those deer naturally. While ethically, I don't care, but from a management, like a distribution of those animals, that's where it starts to have a very negative impact.
Well, and and I think there actually has been research on it. Any biologist will tell you that if you go into like a wooded area or whatever where a bait site or a feeder's been, and you look at the habitat around it, it's destroyed. There's not an ounce of deer food within a 30-yard radius of that. Because they're so highly concentrated there that they're not just at the feeder, they're browsing over here, they're browsing over there. So they just constantly, and normally it can't rebound because they've done such, significant damage to the natural habitat there. So and then eventually you stop feeding, and they were relying on that for food, and now they're like, oh shit, now what do I do?
Well, they leave, they go to another corn pile.
Which is not healthy enough to sustain them in the wintertime anyways. Yeah. So it's
moronic, man. I don't understand how we can continue. Not only some states continue to put up with it, but for states to be introducing it, it's moronic.
It's a money grab in these new states, at least.
Yeah, and it's not that much money. What's $6 million to a state?
Nothing. Nothing. Yeah, if you're relying on that, you're in
compared to the impact that
anyways.
It will definitely have on your deer herd.
Well, you're going to lose hunters because
they're going to lose access. Yeah, moronic.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Doesn't make any sense.
I mean, Tennessee's only got 170,000 deer hunters to begin with. The hell? That's crazy. I would assume that there's another 50,000 that just don't buy a license and aren't recorded somewhere. I do think that's a big miss on states, is the number of people who, especially today, like back in the day, I think everybody bought a license. They felt like they needed to buy. Now everybody's so anti-government and that this is my right. This isn't a privilege. It's my right to hunt. That I bet the number of people who don't buy a hunting license is at least 25% of what they believe in the total number. So if there's 100,000 licenses sold, there's another 25,000 people hunting out there without one.
Could be. Yeah, I don't know.
I would easily believe that.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah. And I've got mixed emotions about it. I'm like, dude, I don't trust the government either, but I want to do the right thing and buy a license. And obviously legally I have to, and we have a platform that we're scrutinized. So we have to do everything right.
Well, and I think part of it is that I want those resources to go to the resources. I want it to enhance wildlife and habitat in the state. And I, whether I benefit from that or other people benefit from that, great. Like as long as the resources benefit.
Well, dude, it's just the same thing. I mean, like at a big picture, it's big government versus small government. It's big management versus small management. It's like, I know that my dollar will go further if I spend it on my own property, as opposed to, it's going into whatever license fees or however they collect it. And then whatever the state does to manage it. I don't know. I never see those impacts. It's, but it's the public welfare stuff, so, and I'm for that, I want public lands to be good and stuff, but
yeah. So I don't know, not to like keep beating the dead horse, because I know people know where we sit on it. To your point, from a legality standpoint or an ethics standpoint, I don't care about baiting. I don't care about feeding. From a management and what's beneficial to not only the management of the resource, but really to the management of the hunter experience, it's destroying it.
Yeah. We're in trouble, man.
And I hate when people say
good.
that, like, and they're like, well, you guys are out of touch. You're saying this. And I'm like,
I don't think so.
Listen, I'm going to have a place to hunt for the remainder of my life because it's what I care about. And I will make sure that I have that. There are a lot of people that won't, because this is going to sneak up to them and it's going to be a rich man's sport. And if you're not making sacrifices in other areas of your life, you won't afford it. And it's not a threat. It's a promise.
It's a reality.
Yeah, it's
reality.
It's what's going to happen here. And so the reason these conversations are happening are not to be like, oh, you guys hate baiting. You want to take opportunity away from me. I only have one day to hunt. I'm just looking for meat in the freezer. All of these things we hear on a continual basis. Dude, you will not hunt. You will have nowhere to hunt. You will see no deer. You will not have deer meat in your freezer. That is where this is going. I'm not trying to change or ruin anything for you. I'm trying to preserve your ability to continue to hunt whitetail deer in your state. That's it. And if you don't believe me, hey, that's fine. I'll be the adult in the room. You can be mad at me about it.
We'll have a place to go. I mean, that's the reality. We're gonna make sure, and we dedicate every day of our lives to, to making money, to be able to afford places, because I'm gonna make sure I have a place to go down the road. And
absolutely,
we have these conversations so that we're not the only ones, and hopefully we can slow that trajectory. It's like we want everyone to have that experience, but if we keep going down this road, which I mean we are quickly. There's not really an end in sight for that. No.
Yeah. And I don't, and frankly, I want people to say, well, we don't want more hunters. Like a Matt Ronell
I get it.
I get that, especially because there's not places to put it. I'm not anti-hunting recruitment. I'm delayed hunting recruitment until we figure out a way to put them in a situation where they're actually going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're going to bring them in and they're going to quit.
That's right.
Right away.
That's right.
My fear, and it's because as hunters, our responsibility is to manage,
which is common sense, by the way.
Oh,
I
know.
What are you going to recruit them into? It's like on a sales funnel standpoint, like running an ad and spending a lot of money, sending them to a landing page that's down.
Yeah, or a product that's out of stock.
You think we're going to convert those people?
No,
they're gone.
They're gone. Yeah. Our responsibility as hunters is to manage the deer herd. What I don't want to have to do is 10 years from now have to kill 30 does a year just to continue to have deer hunters be valuable to the state.
Mm-hmm.
And if we keep going this direction, we will have fewer hunters to kill more deer. And that's going to suck.
And it's not hunters' fault either. It's a misdiagnosis of the opportunity and the management from the state level. So hence
that's the craziest part, dude. Everything these states are telling us, everything, is they're like, we're trying to keep hunters involved and keep hunter numbers strong. And I'm like,
and everything they're doing is exactly what's causing them to quit.
What are you
or not have a place
about?
To go.
Like, everything you're doing is limiting access.
Mm-hmm.
Access. Throw everything out the window. Access is the only thing that matters.
But they're just not understanding the implication.
They're not looking at it. This baiting, case in point, we're going to do bait license. We're going to make $6 million. You're going to lose $60 million from hunters who quit.
In the same way that Andrea wasn't understanding that, guys, you're not going to get guys to think that does are the same thing as bucks. You're also not going to get guys to conform or change what they're doing. They're going to buy the land. Guys that can afford to are going to buy the land.
And they're going to lock it down.
And they're going to lock it down. They're going to displace hunters, and you're not going to have a say over what happens on that property.
Exactly.
Now.
So when you're like, we need to kill more does, and they'll be like, get bent.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's their property. They own it. Do they own the resource? We've had this discussion. No. But when the resource is living on their property, you can't get to them.
It's theirs.
Then what are you going to do? You're going to send sharpshooters in because you have to kill more deer on their property? That's a landowner rights thing, and that's a way bigger issue than deer management.
Mm-hmm.
Then it gets real dicey.
Yeah.
Frankly, the fact that this is the fine line. The fact that they're making people buy a bait license when baiting is legal is a bit of a step there.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to harvest the resource off of your property and need a valid license to do that because you don't own the resource. But I own the land. Why can't I go dump a pile of corn on my land?
Mm-hmm.
That seems crazy. If you say, well, it's because it's tied to the resource and that's going to... well...
It is. That's what I would say.
That's a stretch, though.
No, it's not.
Then why can't you ban trail cameras on private land?
I mean, it's the same thing. It's like at face value, I can't tell you not to dump corn on your land or to monitor your property. But the implication of the public resource is what gives them some grounds.
Which is why I say you could ban trail cameras if you wanted to. If you say, it's for security purposes. No, it's not. So the corn is for feeding squirrels.
Oh, yeah. And that comes down to the enforceability. I mean, it's tough. I mean,
it is. It's almost impossible to enforce.
It's both things at the same time. In the same way, you could also say like, well, I can hunt out of season on my land.
Sure.
It's the same thing. It's like, who's to say I can't hunt out of season it's my land?
Well, it's because it's a direct tie to the state, to the resource that's owned by the state. In the case of dumping a pile of corn in your backyard, like that isn't a direct tie. I just dumped a pile of corn because I wanted to look at it.
Yeah, but I just shot the deer.
Yeah, but then now you took a resource that's owned by the state. There is a line there.
Yeah.
I mean, here's
direct
the thing.
versus indirect.
Here's what's really going to happen is we're going to all end up like South Carolina, where on August 15th, all weapon seasons open and they close in January sometime. And so from the moment the season opens, you can use a high-powered rifle to the moment the season closes. And sure, if you want to use a bow, great, use a bow. You want to use a muzzleloader, great, use it. But it's all weapons all the time. That we're this close, because it's like, okay, the state's sitting there saying, boy, we have seasons open all this time that can kill bucks and does all this time. Like, what else? Yeah, a longer gun season. They just did it in Illinois. It's proposed. Hey, what if we gave them a longer gun season? Like, that would kill more deer, right?
I know.
We're on the doorstep of it.
I know.
Bow season, it will not be a thing. People will archery hunt, and to do so, what will they do? They'll buy more land and lease more land and lock everybody out of it to insulate themselves, so that the guns don't affect their bow hunting. That's where we're going. And the fact that the states are not having this discussion, whether it's disjointed because legislature is making a decision from the commission versus the DNR or the agency, I don't know. But the discussion is not happening, and it needs to, because everything that they're implementing is collapsing this thing. It's a black hole at this point.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good. Deer hunter numbers will plummet because nobody will have anywhere to go.
Yep.
It will be a Richmond sport. The state will lose control of managing the herd because they won't have access to it. Maybe in a state like Pennsylvania where there's a bunch of public land, they will. But in a state like Ohio or Illinois or Texas, it'll be all privately managed. They won't have access to it. They have zero control.
I mean, dude, we're well on our way. You know what I mean? I don't know what the percentage is there, but I mean, I look at how hard we work to gain access and how hard we have to, work at our jobs, you know what I mean, to make enough. I think we do pretty well, compared to just all hunters.
The dollar doesn't go as far.
And I'm looking at like how much of a struggle it is. And I really have to sympathize with them. Like, dude, these guys that are just like, that haven't dedicated their lives to, or are older, maybe didn't have the foresight. It's just, they always had these permission places to go.
My dad's one of them.
They're out.
My dad wouldn't be hunting. Out. My dad wouldn't be hunting anywhere unless he had the properties that I have access to right
100%. Now. Dude, my uncle's same way. Like, if without our property in Ohio that is a family property, and there's like a family property dynamic, there's that stuff still exists there, but it's like that he loves to hunt. He has his whole life and has never, but he didn't make a lot of money to do it. He didn't have to.
And be gone.
And without us maintaining it, he's out. Where are you gonna go?
Out. Yeah, it is. We are well on our way into that. And I mean, to that point, like even us working hard, like, dude, we're looking at properties in Illinois, and it's like, these are $10,000 an acre properties. I'm like, that's insane. And this is coming from a guy who like dedicates his life to make money to buy land. I know. Like, it's like, I can't justify the cost in some of these cases. It's impossible to justify it. There's no possible way that the average blue collar guy can continue to hunt in the United States on the trajectory it's going.
Not have a good experience.
Yeah, there's experience. And everybody that, like, at some point there will be a group that comes in. It'll be in the influx of basically as the hunter numbers decrease and some new guys are coming in, we'll hit a point to where some of the public land experiences will start to improve because the hunter numbers will have dropped off so much. Frankly, I think that's what's happened in Pennsylvania. Maybe you don't see a ton of deer in the big woods, but to go up there and kill a 5-year-old 150-inch buck,
it's awesome.
And you could have never have done that in Pennsylvania, or very rarely. It's because the numbers have come down to the amount of land available. So we'll hit a point there where that experience does exist in really good time, but all of the people along the way dropping off are relating back in their brain 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago. And they're like, dude, I could hunt anywhere. I saw 20 deer a day. I killed so many bucks. Now I can't go anywhere. I have zero access. I go to public land. There's 30 guys hunting it. I don't see any deer. Like, why do I keep dumping money and time into this? And they quit.
Yes.
That's what's happening right now. That is the downhill slide that we're having right now.
Yep.
So until we hit that inflection point where essentially there are a low enough hunter density that the public lands actually start to get better again, and I don't know if that's 5 years from now, I don't know if it's going to vary by state, we're going to just hear more and more complaints and lose more and more hunters. regardless of what you guys do from an opportunity side at the state agency level. Doesn't matter.
As long as we can keep them. I mean, that's the fear, is that like the hunters' numbers get so low to a point where legislators are just like, well, hey, there's nobody to defend the public lands. I mean, that's the hunter number.
I mean,
argument.
I can't believe the fact that like a state like Tennessee, which I thought was like, I'm like, okay, southern, it's Tennessee. There should be a lot of 170,000 deer hunters is nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a blip, a pimple on the ass of Tennessee's population.
Mm-hmm.
At least in Michigan at 500,000 or Pennsylvania at 670 or Missouri at 500,000. Like, those are significant numbers. 170, like, they don't have I imagine they have zero say in that state.
I think it's crazy that, we're talking about Michigan, and you texted Chad Stewart. He's the DNR.
Immediately.
He's the director or whatever.
He's the head of deer and elk.
And who you'd think a lot of people will point blame to, be like, what, why, or give praise to say, yeah, we're stoked about the baiting thing. And he's like, yeah,
it's a dumpster
have
fire.
no say in it. It's like the legislators, they just do what they want. And
so this state is crazy.
Just says a lot about how these states work, and
yeah, and that's where I'm saying, like, Chad takes a lot of the blame for a lot of things,
and he should,
and he does it honestly. He's one of the better ones.
Yeah.
Who's been he's got a Facebook page that you could basically say whatever
he's
you want
open about it. Yeah.
Most of these guys, you don't even know the name of them. I bet there was a lot of people that listen to that. They're like, who's David and Andrea? I'm like, those are the people that are your deer biologists.
That's what I was when I met him. I didn't know.
So when you get into that, and that's where even like Sumner's, I mean, Sumner's takes a hell of a lot of shit, but at least he's out there and vulnerable for it.
Mm-hmm.
That has to happen, and it needs to happen more. The more that you're secluded, the less trust I have in you.
Mm-hmm.
When you don't talk to me, or we say, hey, you should come on the podcast, and you're like, well, I don't know. We can't really, I don't trust you immediately.
Yeah.
Like, what are you hiding?
Yeah.
Why are you trying to be, you're responsible for managing this resource. Like, you need to talk to the people.
Well, they're all afraid for their jobs.
And I don't blame them. Like, I don't blame them for looking out for number one. Sure. I completely get that. And that's where
I do a little bit.
Well, I've had conversations here recently where it's like, boy, the more I talk to these state agency guys, I really wish, and it has to happen at a higher level, just like Gary Alt. I wish that there was a way for every state agency, especially in the deer side, because that's what drives these agencies, that had an immunity position. Mm-hmm. And you put somebody that's the adult in the room who could say whatever that needs to be said and doesn't have to fear for their financial well-being because of it.
The Gary Alt situation in hindsight is kind of like, it's not as encouraging as you would hope. Like, to me,
no.
To look back on it and be like, oh, man, there was a guy who saw a vision for a well-balanced deer herd with quality whitetails, and he advocated for these antler restrictions, and that's what happened. That's not what happened at all.
No, Gary just wanted, the state needed to kill more deer because the forests were going to shit.
It had everything to do with the state's natural resource, not the deer, the timber,
forest.
Timber. So the governor said, hey, Gary,
how do we kill more deer?
We need to kill more deer, and I need you to be in charge of that program.
And people aren't going to like you for it, so I'll give you immunity.
Fortunately, he was smart enough to realize that guys want to kill bucks, and big ones.
He's one of the only guys that I think, kudos to Gary Alt, right? He recognized that exact thing 25 years ago. Gary Alt recognized people don't give a shit about killing does, but we need them to kill does. Mm-hmm. They want to kill bucks. So I'm going to create a situation in which there are better deer in the state of Pennsylvania. There are bigger bucks in the state of Pennsylvania. At the same time, limit the ones they can shoot via an antler point restriction, which will likely say, hey, maybe they'll shoot a doe a little faster because they can't shoot that first buck. And it worked. Yeah. It freaking worked.
So it's one of those things where it's like, good praise to him for sure, because he was smart enough to realize that dynamic. But, fortunately, that it really did give a positive result to the whitetail herd and to the hunting experience as well. But then the dark side of the behind it was like, that's not why it was.
It was there
done.
to kill more deer.
It was there to kill more deer. It was driven by politicians who had a bigger objective.
And it killed more deer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that is the goal. We have to realize that. We can be mad at agencies. Absolutely. Because it is their responsibility to manage the resource. There's a lot of stakeholders at it. You have to recognize, and we have to all be willing to accept, that every state agency is there just to kill deer. That's their job. Their job is to kill enough deer that the habitat and the other stakeholders are at peace.
Mm-hmm. And it's fine. That's what we're here for too, to kill deer. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with that, but it can be done in a way that gives people a great recreational opportunity and places to go, and leaves a balanced, healthy deer herd, and also satisfies all of the stakeholders.
How crazy would it be? Let me throw this.
That's called management. The Hunter Podcast is brought to you by Lone Wolf Custom Gear.
Man, Jared, we are tree stand fanatics, and I think the one thing that we have learned over all these years is to kill big bucks, we got to be mobile. We've been hunting out of Lone Wolves for many years, the original Lone Wolf, and then obviously with the custom gear stuff, we were using the 0.5 and the 0.75. And the one thing that we talked about is like, what if there were no cables? Here we are.
I really just don't know how you can beat it, frankly. But, a lot of that came, too, from a relationship that we've built with the DeQuistos. We've had both Cody and Andre on the podcast a few times. The passion for hunting, the outlook on the sport and stuff, I think is eye to eye with how we look at it. Everything that has gone into building this brand and to building these tree stands is something that we want to be a part of.
This is the 40th anniversary of these guys creating tree stands that have been critical to how we hunt whitetail deer today. If you look over the past, you'll see Andre's designs being implemented across so many stands over the years. Such a cool thing, but really has changed the way that we all hunt whitetail deer from above now.
Right now, you can use code HUNTR, HUNTR, to get 7% off anything on the entire website. Be the Lone Wolf.
How crazy would it be? This is the incentive stuff that I'm thinking about. Okay, I got my normal buck tag, whatever. Hey, Jared, we need to kill more does in Ohio, okay? If you kill and turn in three does for testing for CWD, because let's accomplish that at the same time. Kill 3 extra does. I'll give you one tag that's valid on a 3.5 or older buck, or 4.5 or older buck.
Okay, well, you got a complex situation.
I know, but I'm just saying, first of all, and it's because of
the
age
level class is out the window. They can't judge that.
Well, I mean,
nor can they enforce it.
They could.
You could test it out. All point. It's granted, deer are easier to tell than bears, but
what I'm trying to do is how there's too much effort there, right? If I want to kill 3 does, right, 3 extra does. I'm only doing it on private land.
Just say buck tag then. Say hey.
Yeah.
Simplify it.
Well, but I don't want it to be just pure earn a buck. I want a level of.
It's already not. You're killing 3 does.
Yeah, I want it on a level of higher. I want it on an incentive level that is to kill a mature deer. I don't want you to go kill.
Use a tangible point of reference then. Use an antler restriction.
Okay.
Or main beam restriction.
Yeah, there you go. 15 inches wide or 17-inch main beam. Okay.
Why not make the first one that way?
Because you would lose hunters. Because they can't do that. It'd be frustrating. You lose buck hunters at that point.
Okay.
And you need them because they may kill an antlerless deer. You don't need them to kill a buck.
Okay.
You need them because they may kill an antlerless deer. So the first one has to be wide open. Second one has that strong restriction on it. That would be, I would kill the shit out of does for that tag.
Sure.
Absolutely.
I would too.
What I'm trying to get away from is a state like Illinois where we get pictures on opening day of gun season and it's 2 1-year-old 8-points side by side. And they're like, pack the freezer. Didn't even kill an antlerless deer.
Mm-hmm.
Just smoked the first 2 1-year-old 8-points that they saw because they want to kill bucks. Was nothing about meat.
Right.
If they wanted to kill meat,
it may be. It can be both.
Maybe.
It can be both.
Stretch. They kill bucks.
Right.
Period.
Right.
I think that in that situation, the herd can sustain one of those getting killed. Then it should be a mandatory dodo or do-do-do or something in there before the next one, and that one should be pushed to an age class that's sustainable.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Mississippi does something similar to that.
Not advocating for more buck tags in places where we have high hunter densities.
Well, yeah, because
in places where they already are, I think that makes sense. I do think there's a management benefit to having multiple buck tags in some cases, so that guys can shoot a trophy buck and also a management buck off the property.
I mean, Michigan.
Am I going to shoot? I mean,
Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, Missouri, 4 major whitetail states. New York, actually, too. 5 major whitetail states that have multiple buck tags. When I first learned about some of those, I didn't even know Michigan was a 2-buck state until like this year.
I almost feel wrong. I remember I shot
that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
In Illinois, I was like, is this legal?
Yeah, it's crazy.
I don't know, but it's fun, isn't it?
It's like, how does a state like New York or Michigan or Wisconsin, with the number of deer hunters you have, kill multiple bucks?
None of that's sustainable. Well, and a lot of them don't. I mean, per the stats, which is interesting.
Which is even more why it should have some sort of criteria set to it. Right? Like, if there's not that many people actually killing a second buck, then why not bump the criteria to a 15-inch inside or an 18-inch main beam or whatever that needs to be?
Sure.
to get them to that.
It's an interesting thing that that it's not utilized a lot. I wonder what it is.
People hate antler restrictions is why. And I get it.
No. I'm just saying why it's not utilized. Why they don't shoot the second buck.
I think it's hard.
Just hard, yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder what it is in Illinois. What percentage of guys shoot the second?
But it's very similar to Missouri, which is like 2% or 3%.
That low.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, it is hard.
At one point, I remember Missouri looking at, because they had 3 buck tags, if you remember, for a while there. The third buck tag was like 0.0 something %. Like it was like way down.
Well, so in that case, I don't know how effective that second tag is going to be.
No, well, I mean, but what if it saves 5,000 to 6,000 2-year-old bucks and gets them to 3, or 3-year-old bucks and gets them to 4? That's a big difference in the age structure.
So in that case, yeah, maybe.
I'm advocating purely to help enhance the age structure.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Which is going to go against what the state wants in CWD, and so probably will never happen.
Per how many people are using it now, I don't think it will have the impact that you would like for it to.
Because I mean, effectively, we're doing that, right?
What?
I mean, if we kill 2 bucks in Illinois, we're killing 2 mature bucks. It's not like we're killing a 3-year-old and a 3-year-old, or a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, right? We're killing mature bucks. So I mean, effectively, that's how our brain's operating. I would assume that most people who are being successful with the second buck tag in those states is management mindset.
Sure, I would agree.
Because it's harder, and you need to have the deer and have the access to the deer. And in a lot of cases, you need to have, like, well, in Missouri, one of those tags can be used before gun season. The other one has to be used at or after gun season. So you can only kill 1 buck basically before the first Saturday in November.
Yeah, well, so it's interesting. Like most guys, if they're already doing that, then like, is the antler restriction necessary? It's not going to hurt anything, but it's also just there. Well,
again, if you protect maybe it is a lot of them, but if 6,000 2-year-olds are getting killed with that second buck tag,
which
it would.
We are saying we don't think they are.
I don't know.
Because of the nature of guys that, we don't know.
I don't know. I would like to believe that they're not, but then the more pictures I see, the more I'm like, man, maybe they are doing it, especially in gun season.
Yeah.
In bow, I don't think so. Like with a bow, two bucks with a bow, I don't think so. But in gun season, I think that they're whacking and stacking in a lot of cases with a landowner tag and their normal tag.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at, I'm not trying to take away experience from anyone. I'm trying to create experiences.
Yeah, you're trying to find creative ways to.
And I'm trying to prevent we've got to make a change, because the access thing is just, 2 years ago, if you asked me, I thought, after COVID, could it get any worse? I would have been like, I don't think so. And like, it's worse.
You think it's worse now than a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
You do?
Well, mainly because of the costs. Land prices have continued to go up. I mean, people are leasing land for $100 an acre in Ohio right now.
I know.
$100 an acre.
I know.
What?
And buying for like $10,000.
$10,000 an acre.
Yeah.
That's like, we just talked to an Amish guy here not recently. He was like, I paid $1,300 an acre for most of my farms. He's like, now land's $7,000 to $8,000 in the same area. And he's like, that was 5 years ago. In 5 years, it basically tripled in price.
Mm-hmm.
It's not because of improvements. It's because there isn't any anymore. It's going away.
Forgive me.
Smoker's cough.
Yeah, I know. I see the comments about, people think we're out of touch and stuff, and we can't be all places or speak for everybody. I mean, we certainly are biased towards, we want to hunt mature bucks. I mean, we've kind of evolved through that experience. We come from a lifestyle of hunting, in some capacity, and we've been doing it for as long as we've been alive, type of thing. And certainly there's guys older that we listen to a lot. I mean, that's where a lot of our perspective, I think, comes from.
And a lot of those guys have matured and where they're at. I mean, my dad was one where, he grew up seeing 70 deer during the opening day of gun season, shot the first spike that he saw.
Yeah.
Now he's like, I want to kill a mature buck.
Well, but what I'm saying is, like, dude, I know that we're young or whatever, but I think our perspective is, we've seen a lot. We've been in a lot of these different states. Over the past 5 years here, we've talked to. And I mean, it's not like these podcasts are the only conversations we have about deer hunting. For every podcast we have 10 or 15 other conversations offline. And it's like, I just think that we get it. I think that
the multiple state thing and talking to agencies from multiple states has been invaluable. Like, that's where the first thing we said before we were even on the podcast to David and Andrea, I'm like, you guys realize that the Game Commission, I think, is doing a good job indirectly. It's not their primary purpose.
Mhm.
But like deer hunting in Pennsylvania, quality wise, is better than it's ever been.
Yeah.
Like people will say, well, there's not any deer. Again, it's the numbers thing. Numbers to deer success doesn't equate anything in my brain. I'm talking about just quality of the deer. Is there adequate numbers? Are there mature bucks? All of those things. It's better than it's ever been. And they looked at me like I was on drugs. They're like, we've never heard this before. I'm like, you kidding me? It's like, you guys realize that 20 years ago, we killed 90% 1.5-year-old bucks. And now people are killing like 180 and 200-inch deer in the state of Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, but it's because that isn't success in their brain.
Mm-mm. Yeah, I know.
It's when you have those conversations, and then we have the Ohios and the Illinois and the Missouris and the Kansas and Wisconsins, and you start to put all of these together. That's why half of my comments to people on the game commission when I was like, guys, you don't realize how good you have it in this state. These historically great states of the Midwest are in a massive decline right now.
Mm-hmm. And
we're on the enhancement of quality of deer in the state. Sure, you're not going to see 80 deer on the opening day of gun season anymore, but you might see a 180-inch buck in the state, and you sure as shit weren't seeing that before.
Yeah.
So there is a middle ground for experience that this state has been able to achieve. Ohio, Illinois, all these other guys, it's just continuing to find like huge divisions.
Yeah.
And it's because of the amount of public land that we have in this state that those states don't have.
It's a big part of it.
Because we've got places to put the 14 hunters per square mile.
Well, there's also, there's some massive, the baiting thing is a big one. You could
Giant.
literally separate states into ones that do and ones that don't. And Pennsylvania just is fortunate we never have had it.
Never have had it.
And it's a giant factor.
It's huge.
It's a giant factor.
Yeah. It's a quality of experience thing. Like, I mean, I've got
the season dates have always been pretty, what's the word? Conservative.
They're consistent and conservative. Yeah, I mean, we have big gaps between. And we've talked about it with them. The biggest change here was crossbows, because that was always a injury only opportunity. And so when that changed, you can't tell me that the system and the participation didn't change.
No,
it's been the single largest change that we've had since Gary Alt and the antler restrictions. 25
and
years
that's every state except Iowa and maybe one other.
Yeah. So it absolutely, I'm not saying get rid of them. I'm just saying it changed it, and we have to acknowledge that. And now more people are hunting Pennsylvania. Dude, I could go find a lease for $5 an acre 15 years ago. You can't find one for under 25 or 30 now, because people want them, and they want them because they're spending more time hunting because of crossbows. Gives them more archery time.
I don't know how many times you can circle the bowl, man, before we're like, you either get it or you don't.
I just, the value, and I'm not saying that there's not value in the legislatures, because there is, because there's a lot of things happen there, and there's game and fish committees. I think that we all listening to this need to understand the value of the lieutenant governor and the governor in each of our states. These are the master puppeteers.
Yeah, the lieutenant governor does nothing. That's
okay. The governor in the state.
Yeah.
That's the master puppeteer.
Yeah.
Okay. There is extreme value in having communications and relationships with that thing. I'm not saying that your state senators or state reps aren't valuable as well, but they're, no offense, they're a dime a dozen. There's a lot of them, so they're a drop in the bucket. That governor is the master puppeteer.
Mm-hmm.
The more understandable that governor is, the more success that can happen in your state. Best case scenario, you've got a governor who loves to hunt whitetails and understands that a balanced stage structure is a healthy herd, because everything underneath it from an experience wise will benefit from that.
Yeah.
The worst case is they're like the guy in Colorado who, wants to hug wolves and do whatever. Right. So there's your spectrums. Most of them are going to be in between.
Yeah.
Right.
It's really what it comes down to, man. Does your governor get it? Does he get it or not? And unfortunately, they're politicians. A lot of them don't. Some have roots in hunting and stuff, and so they have empathy, or they're to the situation. But it's just, there's a lot of voices out there, and there's a lot of.
I mean, that's where I'm just rattling my brain of and I'm not saying that you or I or anyone I even know is the people or person for this, but it's like, how do I get a governor? How do I get Shapiro? Whatever you want to think of him in Pennsylvania. How do I get Governor Shapiro to say, I want to appoint I want to
pull them out of a Planned Parenthood and shake them.
I want to appoint a person who can be the voice of reason between the agency, the legislature, and the general hunting public, who has no real financial ties. Like he or she is not threatened by getting displaced from their job, and is purely helping to make decisions and create these discussions that are extremely healthy for the state. If we could figure out how to do that in all of the major whitetail states, to have a person or a couple people that are essentially immune and their responsibility is to be that liaison between them, that's a giant step in the right direction. I'm not saying it's going to fix everything, but if the governor trusts that person and you have the governor's ear, you can win.
Yeah.
You can make a change. Because effectively, that is the missing piece, is that there's a lot of discussion out there. The only change that's happening is for the dollar.
Yeah.
That's it. So until we can get past that and we can consider the future of the resource, like, again, I really believe, documented on this part, Nick, when you're listening to this, you're going to make $6.5 million this year. 10 years from now, you're going to lose $60 million in hunter revenue because of it
100%.
in the state of Tennessee. Because you will lose hunters, you will lose economic benefit from those hunters. It will be a downhill slide. People won't have access. It'll be a mess, an absolute mess.
Yeah, it's the wrong
Same
decision.
with Michigan. You're 5-gallon buckets of bait. You're going to sacrifice 5-gallon buckets of bait, and you're probably going to lose hundreds of millions of dollars over the next 20 years in hunter revenue from it.
Yeah.
Wake up. Yeah, it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. It's purely hey, what do these guys want? I think they want bait. Should we charge them for it? Yeah. Okay. That's it. No thought to the implications that are going to happen from that being implemented. And I don't think anybody at the agency is going to stand up and say anything, because I can't blame them, because
they don't know.
They'll be fired.
And they don't know. Anyway.
If they stood up and said, if a Tonk who's on his way out in Ohio, so we can pick on Tonk, if Tonk went to them and said, you guys are idiots, you need to get rid of baiting right now, or it's going to ruin it. He's out. He's fired. Mm-hmm. You're gone.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, can I blame him for not doing that? No. I wish he could be the sacrificial lamb. I wish a Mike Rex could be the sacrificial, but I can't blame them. That's why you need somebody who has some immunity from the governor and is not financially dependent on the role. Everybody is financially dependent. Even when Kroll, which we had a great conversation with, when Kroll was put as the deer czar in Wisconsin, he had the governor's support, but he was being paid. Mm-hmm. So there's a financial dependency there that I'm sure he said a lot of things. He was way more transparent than I'm sure most people were, but he still had a financial dependency to do what he was getting paid for. Mm-hmm. I don't want that. I want it as essentially an appointed free position, to where I'm just there because I want this thing to be good 20 years from now and 30 years from now, and when my kids are 30 years old.
Yeah. I'm not against them being paid. I mean,
it's a fine line.
Everybody needs to make money, but yeah, it's a delicate situation.
Because if all of a sudden it's so much, like, I don't care. Maybe it's like a board position where you get paid $15,000. Great. That's awesome. But the moment it starts to feel salary-like.
Yeah, you want those guys to be in a position to not need it.
Exactly. That's exactly.
So it's fine if if that's a piece of it. You know what I mean?
There's plenty of guys, like, not to put Skip Sly on but I'm sure if Iowa said, hey, Skip, would you take this role? He'd be like, hell yes.
Oh, yeah.
Because he doesn't need it.
Right.
He's successful in his own right.
Yeah.
He just wants to see it benefit for the state. You find those people.
Well, those are the best politicians. I mean, case in point, I mean, your hat hanging there. It's like the people that don't need the money, but that have a genuine passion, for seeing things improved. It's like, yeah, that's how things get done.
Yeah. And what's the alternative? Like, I told those guys on that, like, I've tried to run for commissioner of Pennsylvania, but I was a 30-some-year-old guy, and everybody that's a commissioner is 60 years old, because they're retired and they don't have nothing to do. Sorry, guys. Like, that's just the reality of it. I wish I could have been the 35-year-old dad who's like, listen, I have young kids. The future of Pennsylvania deer hunting is very important to me 20 years from now. You guys might all be dead. Not trying to be an ass, but that's what we're having the discussion on.
Everybody dies.
Everybody dies. So I might be dead at that point. Whatever. Like, but I want my kids I want to be in that role. When you have people that are unrelatable to the actual hunting public, when everybody is sitting in the 30 to 55-year-old or 60-year-old class, and then all of your decision makers are 60 plus, they're thinking about life differently than the majority of the people that you're needing to be thinking about.
Yeah.
That's a problem. That's a problem with all politics.
Yeah.
But it's for sure. That's why we're talking term limits. Like, I don't need senators who are 85 years old making decisions. They don't know what's happening tomorrow, and I'm thinking about 10 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
So you just can't. And so what does that process even look like? It's like, okay, cool, get it on the commission. I tried. I couldn't do it, right? I went through the process, didn't make it. What do I do? Run for state senate? Okay, that's a drop in the bucket. Do I run for, like, they're impossible tasks. Like, the relationship has to be quicker, cleaner, and more precise, which is governor supports these people who are in some minor paid role because it does take time, but they're looking out for the best interest of the hunting public. Doesn't seem that hard.
Yeah.
In the governor's mind, though, that's the commissioners, and that's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's incorrect.
Yeah.
Those commissioners are not there for the hunting people. They're not. They represent an area, but their lifestyle, they're all rich. They're all wealthy and successful in their own right. They completely are out of touch.
Well, but that's a contradiction, what we're saying there. It's okay. I don't care if they're rich.
But if their goal is to understand and be relatable to the average person, that's not what they're doing.
How do you have both then, I guess? How do you have somebody who doesn't financially need to depend on the role?
They don't have to be
but
rich.
Also is in touch with, okay, well, yeah, but then where's the line? I'm with you.
I think it just has to be, you have to be as relatable to the general public as possible, as considerate of what they're looking for. And if you're retired and 70 years old and well off, you're not.
I think you can be. I don't care if they're rich. You know what I mean? It's like, I can't blame somebody for making money, but like they do have to be in touch with.
They have to be in touch. And I would say that that's a difficult thing.
There's things that work and things that don't.
I mean, there's things that I'm not into. Like, I mean, yeah, I hunt public in Pennsylvania, but if you said, hey, what's public hunting like in Illinois? I'm like, I did it once and I won't ever do it again. Like, I'm out of touch with that just because that's not what I do.
Yeah.
And yeah, is it an impossible task to find somebody who's relatable to all of that? To a point.
Yeah.
But you should at least have an understanding of what that looks like, or a consideration. To the point of both of these baiting, none of these acknowledge the effect that this is going to have on public land. The moment now that every private land around public land could put bait piles down, but you can't put it down on public land, what's that going to do to public land? There'll be no deer on it. All the deer will go to private land to the bait piles. Right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, Ohio is a case. I mean, that's any bait state. You can't generally bait on public. So what it does is it increases competition on private, which displaces locals, which puts them on public. So it increases.
And there's no deer on public because they're all on private.
I mean, they're there. Yeah, no,
till they get pressured.
They're there, but yeah, they're shot out because there's the pressure. Yeah,
it will decrease the quality
of
the
public lands. There's no good argument for it.
And there's no discussion about that. Your public lands were already beat to shit. Now you just, dump gas and lit a match.
I don't know, man. They just don't know.
It's all dollars.
They don't know.
They're like, oh, let's just change funding. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. And obviously no knock to our president, because I voted for him and I like a lot of the policies. Like, the tariff thing's a big part of that. It's like, that's a tough thing on a lot of businesses and a lot of people right now, and the economy is suffering from it. Long term, I don't know. I have to trust the guy that he knows what he's doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what tariffs do. I don't know what the end outcome. But at the same time, if it's purely chasing a dollar, there are implications that are going to happen down the line that are not good because of that. People are going to lose jobs. There's already businesses going out of business. Whether you want them to make their shit in China or not, it's the fact is, 70% of America is made in China. So there's already companies going out of business because of this. Long term, is it a benefit? We hope so. I mean, that's why we're all in it, right? But in the short term, there will be some pretty big negative things. No different than this baiting stuff. Maybe in the short term, you're like, cool, guys get the bait. Maybe they kill a couple more deer. We're gonna make $6 million. Long term, you lost a bunch of hunters because you displaced them and you made access tougher, and you really lost $60 million. We see where that's going.
Yeah.
It's happened in other places.
Well, I mean, not to be insensitive to as far as the tariff conversation to businesses and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yeah, nobody wants that, but dude, that's life. You know what I mean?
Life.
You got cycle of life, you know, things got to burn for them to come back green. You know what I mean? That's how it works. And especially if you see, and we agree that we're going down a wrong path in certain directions, it's like, yeah, it might hurt. It's going to be uncomfortable to make the change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in case in point,
it has to be made.
There are people who are in positions that are smarter than me to make those decisions. I don't know anything about that. I'm entrusting people smarter than me to make those decisions. I have to. Like, it makes me uncomfortable.
Well, and the problem is the more of them we talk to, we realize, well, maybe, hey, they're not smarter than you.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's why I think that this position that we're talking about from the governor is so valuable. Is I want somebody in that position, in that state, that is smarter than me to make the right decisions for the public stakeholders, right? That isn't relying on the legislator just putting in a bait thing and nobody going, hey, what happens when there's no access and we lose 20% of our hunters because of this? Well, why would we lose that? Because there's nowhere to hunt? Well, what do you mean? There's land everywhere. Yeah, it's posted. They can't go on it. Mm-hmm. Oh, I didn't know that. Like that will be the discussion.
Yeah.
As crazy as it seems, because it is common sense. The discussion with those legislatures will be like, well, what do you mean? Like, we have all of Eastern Tennessee is just like big mountains, and like, what about Smoky Mountain National Park? Like, yeah, you can't hunt on it. And they're like, really? Mm-hmm. They have no idea. And until somebody puts them in check, they're going to just do whatever they think, which is like spreadsheets and dollars.
Yeah.
That's it.
I don't know, man. It's a delicate thing. It's like I hate hearing it too, the way that you did it, like the best of deer hunting is behind us. And it's like, but unless we make some changes, or, you know, it is. It definitely is. You know what I mean? It's not in the public interest. Like you said, all the game agencies, their goal is to kill deer.
Kill deer.
And that's fine. You know what I mean? We have to manage the resource, but unless there's a conversation about quality and you know, all these things we're talking about, the best of the quality or what we're looking for out of it is behind us.
Yeah.
At scale. You know what I mean? I think there will always be communities. We're going to do everything we can to secure a place in the future to have. And we'll try to
have, you know, better age classes and quality deer. But like, yeah, I mean, on a large scale, it will be purely population mindset.
Yeah, and I feel bad for people that haven't, like, you know, didn't start 10 years ago. You know, 15 years. You know, be down that path of whatever land ownership of whatever it is. And there's no way to, you know, what I mean,
the barrier to entry is high at this point.
It's high.
Yeah, and to Bill Winke's quote, the only way you're gonna get in is jump in and stop it. Because if you just keep waiting on the sidelines, it's just gonna keep getting higher. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just I hope people listening to this understand, like, we're not trying to, you know, cause a division of elitist or anything. It's purely a standpoint of, like, we have to realize, no matter if you're the weekend deer hunter or you're a guy like us who lives and breathes it 365 days a year, we're all in a world of shit together on this direction. Yeah. If you want to just go out and kill a buck, and I want to go out there and kill a mature buck, those can coexist. But where we're going right now, they won't be able to coexist. I will buy you out, is what's going to happen. Because I will value mine, and I will make sure that I can get to mine, and you will get displaced to something that won't happen.
There's too much competition. I can't stand to have you there.
Meanwhile, we're supposedly down 20+% in hunters, yet there's too much competition. It's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
Yep.
And you have to look at, like, again, not to beat up on the agencies, but I'm like, if I go back and say, okay, 20 years ago, things seem to be at a decent balance. What's happened since then that has ruined it? And sure, you can pick on social media and all these other things because they do have a factor.
Definitely.
In it. Absolutely. But what regulation changes also had a factor in that?
I don't think it's as big a regulation change as it has been the introduction of all of these technologies.
Sure.
Mapping softwares, crossbows, cell cameras, the continued allowance of baiting or introduction of baiting, and certainly liberalization of seasons along with that. And also just the ability,
just information,
and also not to discredit what you said, the industry pressure. You know what I mean? The big buck craze. That's all of it together is compounding to, like.
I mean, that's why archery is so popular. I mean, minus the crossbow side, but just compound bows in general. I mean, like we talked about, like back in the day, a dude killed a deer with a compound bow, and you're like, holy shit, that guy.
Yeah, well, even I would put the compound bows in there too. I mean, certainly there's an argument to say that's a great an advanced technology, I should say, compared to, like.
But look how many people use a compound bow now versus 25 years ago. It's insane.
Oh yeah,
it's 12-fold probably.
Oh yeah,
at least. It's a wow, and that is very industry driven.
For sure.
Very industry driven. You know, bow hunting is cool.
It's awesome.
It's the fucking greatest.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's just amazing. So,
it's
like,
awesome.
Yeah, that all absolutely has. But as a state agency, you have to be cognizant enough to recognize when that's happening and make a state level change to help balance that out. And they never did.
That's right.
They just left the valve wide open.
So it's the lack of legislation.
And the excuses is like, well, we can't keep up with it. Like cell cameras and thermal drone, we can't keep bullshit.
Yeah.
These guys are passing and putting bills out every day that are trash.
I'm not asking for perfect. I'm just asking for an effort.
Effort.
There's some pretty low hanging fruit out there.
Yeah, I mean, if a dude can pass a baiting bill that's going to charge me for a bait license in Tennessee, you're telling me you can't put a ban on thermal drones or on cell cameras or change the definition of archery season? Get the hell out of here.
It's crazy. Dude, the more people we talk, I mean, we've talked to people from almost every state, at least in the Midwest at this point. And certainly every state's got its problems, but like we keep coming back to, like, I think Ohio is one of the most mismanaged deer states in the entire country.
And surprisingly, it's still successful. Could you imagine?
Yeah, it's sporadic though. I mean, I think it's really specific situations where you're seeing that. I think there is an element of the prevalency of high fences and stuff for some of these megas that you're seeing come out of here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think that's linked together.
Yeah, but on a big picture scale, I think it's just a mess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's because they're not killing enough deer. Even the hunters, to the point where hunters are telling you there's too many deer. I've never heard that before in my life. I couldn't believe when we heard that.
Well, it's because it's had the longest history of like all of these things. It's wide open across the board, and so you've just seen all of it unfold like at a rate more than some of these other states, to where now you see the extreme end of it. There's very few places to go. Leases are easily pushing $7,500 an acre. Mm-hmm. They're not shooting deer because we're monitoring the properties and we're only trying to kill bucks. Mm-hmm. And on, all the things that we've.
I mean, the only thing they've done right is keep it at a $1 limit.
Yeah.
HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Pure Wildlife Blends.
Man, what a critical component just to everything that we talk about, especially during these off-season months. We're looking at and developing these different farms and trying to improve them from year to year. And whether that's food plots or different switch screenings or bedding areas, they all require a dedicated and thoughtful seed blend.
Yeah, so obviously Pure Wildlife Blends being Jeff and Jen Sturgis, we've built a great relationship with those guys. And really what we're seeing is a true testament to them picking the best varieties for these mixes. In fact, we're leaning on clover a lot more. The perennial plot power that those guys do was one of the best clover plots I've ever seen. From December to March, we had more deer in a single clover plot than I've ever seen. A lot of these sheds coming from that plot or right around it. Again, just a true testament to what these guys are creating at Pure Wildlife Blends.
No doubt. And so if you guys are looking for just a workhorse seed that the deer will really use the way that you want them to use it, you can use promo code HUNTR, HUNTR, for a discount on the Pure Wildlife Blends website. Yeah. Let's talk about broadheads.
Yes. So there is a bit of an announcement.
Yeah, you love doing that. Yeah. We're making a switch this year.
We are.
These have been sitting here the whole time. People have seen these, but this is a pack of beast broadheads here.
You may have heard of them before.
You've obviously heard of these before. So I don't know how you want to go into this, but we'll just kind of dive in here. Yep. We're making a switch this year to beast broadheads, which Josh Bomar owns. Obviously, no surprise. I got that head laying down here on the floor. I shot a big buck on Josh's property last year. Mm-hmm. He's become a good friend of ours, and that is a big part of it. But truthfully, I think there's a progression here.
I think we should be open and talk about it.
Oh, we're definitely going to.
Okay.
That I think makes a lot of sense. I mean, we've been talking for 5 years now. We've been doing this podcast about our progression through some different broadheads. Mm-hmm. We are unwavering in our opinion that with our bow setups and arrow setups, that big expandable broadheads are the most lethal.
I get everybody else's argument. Good for you. That's
fine. And for other setups, it's great. And if you believe it, that's fine.
This is what we believe, and we have had tremendous success with.
The progression has been, you and I for a long time. There was others before. I mean, we've shot, Ramcats and all the other ones, your
Muzzies when I
your
started,
G5s and
Magnus, whatever. Yep.
You know, until we got to that belief system where we're like, hey, big expandable broadheads is the way to go. There have been some weaknesses over in years past, like when Rage first came out with it, there was a lot of criticism around weaknesses of the blades and this and that. They certainly have come a long way.
They have.
They've come a long way.
It was, I think I shot my first buck with a Rage in 2011 or 12, something like that. I shot the normal two blade, you know, and I think we bounced back and forth. We went to G5. Eventually, Rage came out with a tri-pan.
And before that, it was there was a hypodermic. Before that, there was a 2.3.
2.3.
There were several.
Yeah, the tri-pan was the fatal flaw for us with the tri-pan, which was 6 or 7 years ago, was they only made 100 grain, no 125s.
That's right.
It was a great broadhead. I mean, I killed a lot of deer with that. And then
is that still the case? It might be.
I don't think they make 125s.
Interesting.
So, and I don't know. I've kind of lost touch with Rage.
I'm gonna say they do.
Yeah, I kind of have lost touch with Rage here, but that broadhead was really good. So in theory, rear deploying, slight curve on the blades.
They do. They make 125 grain now.
About time. Slight curve on the blades was a really, really good broadhead. Still,
maybe it's just the hypodermic.
Yeah, I don't like the hypodermic. I only like the tri-pan because of the curve in the blades, which we'll talk about. That essentially like a bone.
Tri-pan didn't have that.
Yeah, it had a slight curve. I'm pretty sure.
No, none of the Rages do.
Doesn't have a slight curve at the bottom there?
Nope. That's the tri-pan.
Yeah, I guess that's what I meant. Like the cut down there at the bottom. Not a curve.
Yeah, no curvature to the blade. It's straight. But I agree. I like the tri-pan more than the hypodermic. I don't think, could be wrong, but I don't think they make the tri-pan in a 125. They make the hypodermic in a 125.
There you go. Yeah. So anyways, that was originally, we kind of, that was the pathway we were on. We're like, hey, big, two-blade, expandables, tough. And I mean, we killed the shit out of deer with them.
I mean, I'm going to tell you what, I think that Rage tri-pan in my mind is top 3 broadheads out there right now.
Agree.
It's awesome. I think it's as sharp, if it's very close to as sharp as the Beast, which is like these
sharpest.
Some of the sharpest broadheads that they make. You know, these are German Lutz blades or whatever they call them. You know? So the sharpness is epic. I think that I'm talking to the Rager, the rear deploying technology, I think is...
You don't lose kinetic energy. Because everybody will say, well, okay, what about these other ones?
Well, you do, but not as much as a front
like an NAP or a Schwacker's another one.
Gravedigger.
Yeah, all those ones that open this way, you lose a ton of kinetic energy at impact on that side.
And they have the ability to deflect as well. We think that a rear deploying technology is superior to front deploying. So those Rages were awesome. We shot those for several years. I think the point that we reached was we're like, I don't think we would have changed anything other than we were like really looking. We realized the importance of durability. Yep. We're like, man, as long as it's durable, this expandable, that's what you need to have. So what's, and at some point, Sever entered the conversation.
Well, people started testing a lot. They came out with the normal two blade, and they started testing that, and it scored really high on things.
Durability.
On durability.
Across the board, but especially durability.
And they made a 125, which was exciting as well.
That's right.
So it was like all of these things started to align there, and so we were having conversations. And so the first ones that we shot 2 years ago would have been the Sever 2.0 titanium.
At least 2 or 3 years ago. We started mixing them in.
And they were great. A 2-inch blade. I felt like they were sharp. They weren't extremely sharp, but they were sharp, but durable, great penetration, and good trauma. I had no complaints, honestly, besides maybe the sharpness on the 2.0 titaniums.
Yep. I do, but we can come back to it.
Yeah, well, we found a fatal flaw. And I think we found that flaw last year.
2 years ago.
Was it 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Oh, it was late season when you killed those does.
Yeah.
Go ahead and talk about that before we jump into the next one.
So the fatal flaw of, and it's not to downplay, these are all great broadheads. Frank, I would recommend that you buy any one of these. Yeah. Sever, Rage tri-pan, or, and this Beast is what we're landing with here. The fatal flaw with those Severs is that the blades are dependent on one another. And so...
Which, in theory... they use as like, hey, it's going to go around bone. It's going to do this.
Well,
right?
it can be a positive. I mean, that's the technology that they have built in. It's, I know Beast calls it bone avoiding technology. I don't know what Sever calls it, but it just basically
pivots.
The blades pivot like this. So when it expands, they lock in place, and then they have the ability to pivot like this, which is great if you nick the side of a
rib cage,
a scapula or in that area, it can work. They do not expand and contract. So I mean, it has to go the full length.
Yep.
The full 2 inches or whatever it is.
Left, right.
Through a hard surface.
Yep.
The fatal flaw is that if one of those blades breaks or gets damaged, the other is rendered useless.
It's essentially a fill point.
Think about this being the pressure that's being applied. If one breaks,
the other one
this
tucks
one
in.
folds
It tucks back into the ferrule, basically.
and there's no cutting surface at all.
Yeah, or the body.
And I had that happen, I think,
on does.
At least once, maybe a handful of times.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, in all those cases, it was like it was a well-placed shot, and I had the ability for some follow-ups and stuff like that. But it scared the crap out of me.
Yep.
I was like, dude, not good. And it never crossed my mind until that point. I was like, the technology is amazing. This is great. These broadheads, they're super durable. Until I broke one of the blades and I realized it's useless. It's like it's Achilles' heel.
Yep. So then they came out with the hybrid, which essentially had the bleeder blade to not counter that, but then you have at least a cutting surface if something like that happens.
Yeah.
And we got those last year. Again, sharpness in question on the blades. At first, because they tested off the charts. I think it was the highest tested broadhead from like a penetration, like every durability down the list. Like it was the best broadhead that ever been tested was the Sever hybrids.
I think sharpness was the only one that if you watch, I really want to remember that guy's name because he does some awesome reviews.
That's where we saw it.
We'll remember it. It was everything except sharpness tests off the charts. I want to say Beast and Rage, I think they both score like a 125 out of the box.
The lower the better.
Lower the better.
Yeah.
Beast is the only one, for sure, the most durable. It after going through plates of cardboard layers or whatever, it still had the exact 125, which is amazing. It means it lost no durability. Rage is not quite as durable, but
Sever was in like the 300s or something.
Yeah, the Severs are, compared to those ones, pretty dull.
Yeah. So anyways, it tested off the charts, though, and everything else. So we used it last year. I killed both my bucks and
with a Sever hybrid.
A doe with the Sever hybrid.
Yep.
I pump stationed both of those bucks, and they died within sight. So I'll say that.
Mm-hmm.
They were terrible blood trails.
Yep.
Absolute terrible. And the reason I'm a big proponent of big expandables is
blood trails.
Yeah, blood trails, trauma.
Yep.
I want trauma and I want blood trails. That's where, like, even back in the day when the Rages weren't good at pass-throughs, I created a freaking 4-inch gash on the entry and they bled like crazy.
Yeah.
So I found them. You found the deer.
Yeah.
So when I started looking at those closer, the biggest thing is the 2-blade cut on the expandable or on the hybrids went from 2 inches to 1.5. And then they added 0.7 bleeder. So in theory, they're like, it's 2.2 inches of cutting.
Yeah.
But the largest hole that you have is now only 1.5 versus 2.5, and it's duller from a sharpness side. That smaller cut absolutely was why blood trails were frankly, the 2.0 titanium was a better blood trail than the Sever hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, I shot that doe, and it was on a quartering 2 shot, so I ended up going through lung, heart, liver, basically. But dude, I was on my hands and knees looking for blood on that doe and she died 150 yards from where I shot her. She didn't bleed at all. That was it for me. That was the line in the sand of like.
We kept having it too, and I was like, it didn't make sense because I was like, man, the design is flawless. It's
got pass-throughs on every deer I killed.
Everything is right about it on paper, and we just weren't getting the blood trails that like and we're like, well, I don't know, maybe it's just something weird happened, maybe the guts plugged it or whatever, and like.
Yeah, and dude, you got to have blood to find them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great that they fell in sight. But
killed them. We killed them all. I don't know if I had a deer get away on the Sever, honestly.
No, No, but that doe was tough, and if I had not seen both of those bucks fall, I probably would have been in a little worse situation for sure.
Yeah.
So enter. Okay, now what? And like at that time, we had obviously made the relationship with Josh.
Yeah.
You know, and
well, he just came out with these two years ago.
Yep. And they sent us some of the 2.0 titaniums. Is that what those are?
Yeah.
Yep. And so they sent us some of those last year towards the end of the
two blade,
middle of the season.
125 grain, 2-inch cut titanium ferrule.
Yep. And so, you know, it essentially it has some distinct differences from that Rage Tri-Pan, but it also has a lot of things that are similar to that Rage Tri-Pan that I really like. I mean, 2-inch, super sharp. The two things that are really different are the spring. Mm-hmm. That's not something that I've had ever with a broadhead. And the swooping blades that have that bone avoiding technology.
It's a big deal.
Yeah. So, and it's because you and I are tight to shoulders. I mean, when we're shooting.
Oh, dude, and this is not for everybody. The shoulder doesn't exist to me.
Exactly.
I'll put it right on.
Which for most people shooting and expand, and I should back up. We're talking about this in a purely whitetail setting. I'm not experienced enough in elk to know. Like,
I shot a bull elk with a Rage Tri-Pan 2 years ago in the shoulder.
Yeah.
That's not a broadhead conversation. I mean, it is, but it's more of an arrow and bow build conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm shooting, for context
heavy
for everybody,
arrows.
I'm shooting 80 pounds with a 500 grain total arrow weight.
Yep.
That includes the 125 grain broadhead.
Heavy.
There isn't a better penetrating setup, for whitetails. You're shooting 70 pounds with
485.
About 485, which puts you right at that sweet spot of about 300 feet per second.
Yep, I'm right on it.
Yeah, that's where you want to be.
Yep. And so I'm a tight to shoulder because I am a little bit more afraid of like femur bone, but I'm not afraid of shoulder blade. I'm tight to shoulder, and I want a massive wound channel going through. Mm-hmm. Frankly, I'm not even that worried. It hasn't happened here recently, but I'm not even that worried about pass-throughs as much as I am just an initial big cut. That was my big thing with, was it Schwackers? Who is the one that when it goes in, it's like a pencil hole, then it opens up.
I'll put this out to everybody. You don't want a Schwacker broadhead. That's the wrong style.
Yeah.
And I know guys kill deer again.
Levi kills a shitload.
You kill deer with all these and bigger gear than that. The problem with that broadhead is if you don't get an exit wound, there is no entry wound.
There is no entry.
I think they're putting some bleeders on them now and stuff, so you can get a little bit, but
tiny.
You don't want that.
I'd rather have no pass through in a 4-inch gash than a pass through with nothing. Yeah, there you go.
I figured out how to set those off. I can deploy it from the back.
Oh, deploy it from back.
Yeah. They give you these little booties in the case.
And even still, and Jared, you see his missing finger. Jared is pretty,
These things are scary, dude.
Yeah, he's just you're sitting there and you're like, I don't know how hard I should press on these things before because of the sharpness.
They're scary, man. I've gotten pretty comfortable in the past with dealing with broadheads and just kind of toying with them and stuff. You don't want to mess with these.
No,
these are dangerous.
Yeah, which I like,
and that's what you want. Yeah, I mean, dude, here it is. That's this thing going off. I know we're not close up on it, but
yep.
That's that spring loaded. And so the difference here is that these are spring loaded, right? And they don't rely on one another for the pressure. That's what I was talking about.
With the sever,
with the sever. So if one of these breaks, I still have the spring holding the other one forward. They're not dependent on one another.
Yep.
So that was a big deal. Frankly, that Achilles heel was enough to where I was like, we need to figure something out. I need to figure something out here. When we were getting ready to go hunt Josh's farm last year, I think this is where it came up. We were kind of already like, hey, that's a sick broadhead, but we had a relationship with Sever at the time.
We had some conversations with him. I'd killed my Ohio buck already, and it fell in sight, but it was like, boy, I expected more blood, essentially.
Yeah, and so we gave some feedback, and I think the reality is, so Sever's owned by Easton, which is a family company of Hoyt, and so it's all good, right? Like we're still friends with those guys and stuff, and I just think that they it's a small company compared to Hoyt and Easton.
Yep.
And so I don't think they have the ability to innovate as quickly as, a small, focused, independent company, let alone it's Josh Bomar, who's going to work harder to make the best broadhead in the world.
Mainly for himself.
And so when we were getting that all lined up, I think Josh was like, hey, just one stipulation, if you're going to hunt my farm here, he's like, I would ask just out of respect that, you shoot that beast. And I was like, oh.
We were driving.
I was like, oh, no, it was before that.
Oh, okay.
I was on my deck. On my deck, and we were talking, and that giant showed up. I'll bring him up here.
There he is.
This giant showed up on camera, and Josh was like, dude, freaking mega just turned up on this farm. I'm going to let you guys hunt. And I'm like, game on. And so he had me at that point. What I was going to say now. He's like, hey, just out of the run request I would have from you. He's like, and I know you have the relationship with Severs. Like, I need you to shoot the beast for me. And I'm like, done.
Yeah.
Yes. What am I going to say? Like, I'm not going to prioritize, frankly, a partnership over big deer. Like, I'm here to kill big deer, man. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, but we need to talk about it. So I called Gary.
Yeah. Out of transparency, it wasn't like we just did it. Like, we called Sever and had a conversation and said, hey, listen, we're going to hunt this farm. And to do so, Josh is basically having us shoot the beast.
Yeah, he's asked that we do that. And there was other farms. Like, you shot your buck last year with a Sever.
Yep, Sever in Iowa. Yeah.
Because you weren't hunting Josh's farm. So, we did everything we could to be, true to that. And we obviously value our partners extremely. So, but we had that conversation, and, it landed how it landed. They kind of were like, well, hey, do what you need to do. And, we didn't go out of our way to, like, frankly, until today.
But I think some people observed it.
Maybe. Maybe.
In the videos and stuff. But like we because of our partnership, we didn't highlight it, and Josh was cool with that.
He was cool.
We said, hey man, listen, you said you would, but we didn't want it to be publicly made known. We weren't going to talk about it. Don't use any of the photos of us with. And he was, out of respect, he was absolutely cool with that.
He was cool about it. Yep. So I did shoot this buck with that beast titanium, that broadhead right there last year. And you guys have heard the story. I made a bad shot on it. I hit the femoral artery that runs underneath the spine back there. Am I saying that right? Femoral artery?
I don't know what it is.
I hit the artery that ran underneath of the spine. It's a bad shot. And the deer trotted 20 yards and piled. I mean, this deer was
a horse.
I mean, it was a horse, and he died so unexpectedly because I knew when I made the shot that it was not a good shot.
Yeah.
In my mind, I'm like, that looks like maybe guts to me. It's a mixture of emotion where I'm like, hey, that's a dead deer, but like, how long?
Yeah.
And so I had some doubt on the initial shot, and he trots 20 yards and fell over. I mean, that deer had to have been dead within 30 seconds, probably, of that arrow going through him. And it just devastated him. In fairness, I think that any of those three broadheads that I mentioned, and probably some others, would have done that.
It's a game of millimeters where you were, though.
That's why you shoot those big expandable broadheads. It's an argument for that as much as anything else. The sharpness is undeniable. You know what I mean? I can't say that he would have bled as much or as quickly with any others. That's the sharpest broadhead that they make.
Yep.
But it just gave me a resounding confidence, and I was like, dude, this, you know what I mean? I almost didn't want to admit it at the time because I was like, we still were very much, tied to this Sever thing. But I was like, that thing is mean. And I think that's the evolution that we were looking for, to save ourselves from that Achilles heel. The other thing is from a penetration standpoint, unlike, I don't think there is another expandable broadhead on the market that has this spring-loaded technology in a way that instead of taking energy to open, which they all do, it's essentially a net negative. There is no loss in energy because it's deploying the broadheads forward at some ridiculous, 700 feet per second.
Yeah, it's pushing everything. So you're not,
or miles per hour, or what, I'm sure it says here on the box, whatever.
Yep.
It's also got those curved blades like we were talking about. That's a big factor when it comes to penetration. And rather than, like we said, having the back and forth technology of the Sever, each is independent. And I'm like, man, that's as close to perfect as we.
It's wild too when you think about it. You've got 18 to 24 inches of mature buck you're going through, and there's so much to happen from the moment contact happens to the moment that arrow exits, and it's got to do as much damage through that time frame as possible. That's all we want. I get the arguments on single bevels and all of it. My goal is like I want as much trauma to those major organs as possible.
Yeah.
In that little amount of time.
I mean, not to like harp on it too bad, but like the single bevel, like in the fixed blade thing, is a craze, just like a lot of things are,
Sure.
And it has to do with, there's a lot of expandable broadheads that don't give you good penetration.
Correct.
And certainly if you're not shooting a setup that is built for penetration, let's say you're shooting 60, 65 pounds with a 300, 350 grain arrow, not weighted towards the front.
Yep.
Then inherently you're not going to get as good a penetration, and you need your broadhead to pick up some slack there.
Yep.
That's where the fixed blades come in.
Yep.
Especially if you're contacting bone. I mean, solely if you're contacting bone.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're giving up in exchange for that is cutting diameter, which frankly is what causes them to bleed, which is what causes them to die.
Yep.
So it's a compensation.
That's it.
It really is. And so if you are shooting that setup and you're going to continue to shoot that, then you probably should be shooting a fixed broadhead. We're not.
Sure.
There's nothing wrong with that. But if you are to a place here where you can achieve good penetration with your setup,
yep,
you need to be shooting the most
weight.
lethal expandable broadhead that you can.
Yep, agree.
How's that?
That's it. That's reason.
So I'm super stoked. I hope nobody feels deceived that I had in my quiver, I had 3 severs and I had a beast. I had the one beast that he's like, hey, I need you to shoot with that, and it just worked out and freaking.
No, I just hope people that like our biggest pet peeve in the industry is like one day, 1 year telling you like this is all I use, it's the best thing ever, and then the next year I'm like, no, it's actually this one. And then the next year it's like, well, these guys were even better because it's money driven, right?
Yeah.
And so we had a lot of conversations prior to this relationship with Josh, just because like that is something I don't like. I hate about the industry. I hate changing. But there were, we take our gear extremely serious, and especially when we release an arrow, we want it to be as lethal as possible. And there were, like we said, I don't think we didn't kill a deer with a sever. I mean, every deer that we shot died. Mm-hmm. But there were definitely some things that were concerning, and I don't think we're going to be acknowledged either.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
In the interim. Maybe at some point they will.
I agree.
But in the interim, they weren't going to be acknowledged, and that, to me, was a flaw for our setup.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and despite those, it still is in the top 3 of broadheads that I would recommend.
Absolutely.
From our own personal experience and also a lot of other people's testing and stuff. I think it's super interesting.
Killed every deer we shot with them.
Yeah. So I don't think you can go wrong with any of those 3. Again, it doesn't nullify your bow or your arrow setup. All that stuff is super important, but it's a big factor.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that's where we're going with this. Josh and the team are cool enough to give us a code, so you probably either have or will hear the commercial in this episode.
For all of our partners,
just HUNTR.
Code HUNTR. I think it gets you 10% off on the Beast website. It's a discount of some sort. It's he was generous to give that to us. So we hope that you guys will use that. This is a sincere endorsement of this broadhead. I mean, this is I'm really excited, really honored. That they would choose us to partner with as well. And we're going to have these in the quivers this year. One other thing I want to mention is an issue that I was having. Not to again, throw shade at anybody, but an issue that I always had with the severs was putting them into my broadhead. They don't have, or into my quiver.
Yep.
They don't have both Rage and Beast have like some sort of a click collarless type of technology where it clicks into place. It is where it is.
We were bands.
Yeah. The severs have a rubber band. And so there is no fixed position. It's like a soft wall as opposed to a hard wall in terms of a bow draw. And so when you'd put that into your quiver, if the contact points would hit any kind of surface at all, they would start to deploy your blades.
Yep.
And so it's fine when it's broad daylight out and stuff, but when it's dark and you're putting things in and out, it's that was something.
That's what my dad called me last year. He's like, you got any more of them rubber bands? I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, all my broadheads are open in my quiver.
All the severs?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. See, there you go.
Just adjusting them. And again, in the dark and stuff, I was like, yeah, I got spares with me.
Yep.
So, but yeah, that's a big piece. So
I also know there's a lot more to come from Beast. I mean, this is not a prototype by any means, but this is, they're in year 2. And there's a lot of technology packed into that broadhead and things that will manifest over the next couple of years that I think you guys want to get in on this.
Yep. So anyways, that's, our goal, obvious in this thing is always to be transparent with you guys. And so the relationship makes sense for us just because of what we built with Josh and Sarah and those guys. And but ultimately just to, deploys over 940
There
miles.
You go.
Just here's the craziest thing. And I forget who, it was Glessinger and I had this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about Josh from a whitetail side and just how people will think. And I was like, the coolest thing about Beast is that I know that Josh set out to build the best broadhead for himself. And he's such a deer nut that he will sacrifice nothing. He wouldn't shoot it if it wasn't the best.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, if Josh is just making it the best for him, then clearly it's going to be awesome for us. And it's a weird thing to say that because most companies are mindful of cost and like what's the market. Josh built this because he wanted a better broadhead for himself. And it's a cool thing to think about, is that because of that mindset, then clearly like you're getting, what he believes is the best possible piece of gear for that category. So
no doubt. So, and there's some really cool people involved. I mean, you mentioned Glassinger's. He's not in the company, but the HuntWorks
guys shoot them.
They shoot those as well. And
Greg Pohl.
Yeah, so we're gonna have several of these guys. We're gonna have on because they're interesting guys in their own right, but they're also affiliated with Beast here. So that's Greg Pohl with Bow Junkie Media.
Bow Junkie, yeah.
Runs the company, frankly, for Josh. I think he's the COO. We're going to have him on here in the next couple weeks to talk all about that. David Hauser's actually here local. I don't know if you knew that. He's just he's north of us in Pittsburgh. So we'll have David on at some point, and certainly Josh will be back on a few times this season too. So super excited about that partnership. Hopefully that thought process makes sense to you guys. I don't want to offend anybody for any broadheads that they're shooting. It's funny. The fixed blade versus expandable thing has been out there forever.
I've killed deer with all of them.
Shoot what you feel comfortable with. We have been super mindful of our evolution through this thing, and I genuinely believe this is the best expandable broadhead out there right now for us.
Yep, I agree. So. Cool. Well,
anything else?
No, man. I think it was good to just get a solo in here. We've been waiting.
I like these.
Waiting to do that, and you never know the topics you're going to cover, but we've got some other partnerships to announce here in the upcoming future on some stuff. Hopefully, people have, if you've listened through. I know it wasn't that long ago. We got some comments like, "Dude, like, give me some new commercial blood or something here." So I know that Nick, I think in the last one and this one, we have new Hoyt commercial in. We have new Beast commercial. We have a new pure wildlife blend in. Yeah. We've got some coming up with some other partners here. So we're refreshing the commercials here in the next few weeks. And so those will all get changed up a little bit. So I hope you guys have fun with those and don't feel like, don't get caught off guard when you hear something different because
I'm glad we did this. I didn't want to just like throw a Beast commercial in there without you guys hearing it from us first, right? So this is hopefully the first time anybody, that you're hearing about it. That's the explanation for it. And then, they'll have a commercial somewhere in a podcast moving forward. So,
Cool. Well, we appreciate everyone listening to episode 249 with Jared and I just shooting the shit. And as always, we will catch you all next week.
Later.
Take me